Chapter 54. You came in just like that. Ji Ling tilted her head. You came into my room just like that. Quietly waiting for me to return. Yin Yang paced around Ji Ling with his hands behind his back, clicking his tongue. Miss Ji's ability to steal a woman is not bad. What did you say? Ji Ling's embarrassment turned into anger, her little canine teeth bared as she said fiercely, say that again. Recalling the words female pervert that Yin Yang had said earlier, and the words stealing a woman, she felt the urge to beat him up. Yin Yang raised his head and said, why? You're the one who did it, but I'm not allowed to say it. You. Ji Ling's embarrassment turned into anger as she felt that she could not gain the upper hand in a verbal battle. This child can't beat me anyway. She lunged forward. Yin Yang was about to dodge, but Ji Ling was fast and had already twisted his hands behind his back. With a twist of her hand, she had Yin Yang pinned to the ground. She raised her knee and hit the back of Yin Yang's buttocks. Yin Yang flew out like he was riding on a cloud, sprawling on the ground. Before he could even cry out in pain, he felt a weight on his back. Ji Ling had already sat on his back. Yin Yang felt as if a mountain was pressing down on him. His back that had just straightened up a little fell back onto the ground with a thud, crying out in pain. Are you going to tell me or not? Ji Ling asked fiercely. My home, why can't I tell you? Yin Yang was panting as he struggled to raise his head. Ji Ling stretched out her hand and pinned Yin Yang's hands behind his back. She exerted force, causing Yin Yang to wail, ouch, ouch, ouch. Are you going to tell me or not? I'm not. Can I do it? Yes. Yes. Big sister, let go. Do you still dare to give me that look? No, no, no. Ouch, did you kill Shiman Wandai? Yes, I killed him. I killed him, all right? Yin Yang twisted his body, trying to regain control of the situation. However, Ji Ling's cultivation base was more than a level higher than Yin Yang's. It was almost impossible for Yin Yang to move even if he wanted to. Ji Ling sat on Yin Yang, looking down at him from above. For a moment, she felt a sense of pride. Thinking of how she had been bullied by this fellow for the past few days, she felt exhilarated, as if the weight in her chest had been lifted. He said arrogantly, who asked you to piss me off these few days? Let me tell you, when you're not strong enough, it's better to tuck your tail between your legs. At this point, there were hurried footsteps at the door. Ji Ling was taken aback, but before she could jump up, the door was pushed open by Lao Mei. His anxious voice could be heard, young master, what's going on? Why do I hear that there's a fight here? Then, he choked on his voice. Ji Ling turned back and Yin Yang lifted his head with difficulty. Lao Mei was standing at the door with an incredulous look on his face. His eyes looked like they were about to pop out of their sockets as he stared at them. His mouth was so wide open that 2 duck eggs could almost fit in it. Ji Ling jumped up instinctively and stammered, it's nothing, it's nothing. Lao Mei smiled apologetically, I didn't see anything. You guys can continue, I didn't. Ji Ling stammered as she grew more anxious. It's nothing, young people. Lao Mei took a step back, playing games, it's normal, don't go. Ji Ling jumped up anxiously, I just wanted to teach him a lesson. Yes, I wanted to teach him a lesson. That's why I'm riding on, she suddenly choked as she spoke. Riding on him to teach him a lesson? Even Ji Ling herself did not think that such a reason could be justified. It's nothing. Lao Mei looked awkward as well, feeling that he should not have come over. He blurted out, actually, it doesn't matter who's riding who. I'm leaving, feeling that he had said the wrong thing. He ran off once he closed the door, you guys can continue, no. Ji Ling rushed over to open the door and said anxiously, it's not what you saw. Don't misunderstand. Listen to me, however, there was no sign of Lao Mei at the door. Ji Ling's mouth was agape as she looked at the empty yard outside the door. She could only feel her face heating up like it was on fire. As the night breeze blew, Ji Ling stood there in a daze for a moment. Suddenly, she reacted and cried out in extreme embarrassment. Covering her face with both hands, she squatted down. This misunderstanding could not be cleared even if she jumped into the endless ocean. My reputation, my reputation. Ji Ling squatted on the floor, feeling too ashamed to face anyone. As she thought about it, she began to sob. Why are you crying? Yin Yang got up quickly and asked in confusion. I was the one who was beaten up. Why are you crying when you're the one who beat someone up? Ji Ling whimpered, it's none of your business. I don't want to either. Yin Yang's words triggered another wave of anger, but he was still oblivious to it. But this is my room. If someone hears you crying here, they'll think that I've... Ji Ling sprung up and choked Yin Yang's neck. Her face flushed red as she said through gritted teeth, do you dare continue? Ugh, let go. I can't breathe. Yin Yang rolled his eyes. Ji Ling finally let go. Yin Yang covered his neck and coughed for a while. Rolling his eyes, he said, just a little more. Ji Ling snorted. Speaking of which, why did you come to my place so late at night? Yin Yang's tone turned serious as the alarm was lifted. He could clearly feel that Ji Ling was suspicious of him just now. After rambling on and on, Yin Yang could also feel that Ji Ling no longer suspected him of killing Shimin Wandai. Of course, it was time to discuss the matter now. It's all because of you. Ji Ling snorted, her tone even colder. I heard that Shimin Wandai had sent someone to kill your father, so I've been paying attention there. I didn't expect to see a commotion there, so I went over to take a look and found out that Shimin Wandai is dead. I had nothing better to do. If the Shimin family were to vent their anger on you, they would find trouble with you. Ji Ling snorted and said, I came over to tell you, but you weren't home. Yin Yang's eyes were filled with warmth. How could he not know that this young lady was concerned about him? She had already been hurt by him, but she still paid attention to the news here. Once there was news, she still came to inform him. Yin Yang understood immediately. This girl was not trying to trick him from the start. I just felt that I had nothing else to say, so I purposely did this as an opening remark to prove that I wasn't here to inform you of something. I am here to investigate a case. This was the subtle sentiment of a young girl. Thank you. Yin Yang took in a light breath and said solemnly, putting away his frivolous demeanor. Ji Ling was not used to his sudden seriousness. She was stunned for a moment before replying, you're welcome. Anyway, that's what's happening now. Shimin Wandai's death has driven the Shimin family crazy. Ji Ling said hurriedly, you have to be careful. I'm leaving. Ji Ling lowered her head. The domineering aura she had when she was riding on top of Yin Yang and pummeled him was nowhere to be seen. Yin Yang's leisurely voice came from behind, Yin Yang is not an insensible person. If there's a chance in the future, I will definitely repay you for your kindness. Ji Ling snorted and said, who wants you to repay me? Suddenly, she was stunned and turned to say, however, I do have something that I need your help with. Yin Yang was stunned. I just said I'll repay you, and you really have something you need my help with? He braced himself and said, please speak, young lady. Ji Ling bit her lip and said, I have an elder brother who has been missing for many years. My family has searched the entire Tianxian continent, but we couldn't find any news of him. I heard that he appeared in Tiantang City 2 years ago. Yin Yang heaved a sigh of relief and asked, what's your elder brother's name? Ji Ling said, my elder brother is Ji Lingfeng. He's 25 this year. He's not very tall, very skinny, and there's a dimple on the left side of his face when he smiles. He's definitely a good person. She told Yun Yang about her elder brother's situation in detail and even took out a portrait. Yin Yang unfurled the portrait and was immediately captivated by it with just a glance. Amidst the white snow, a man dressed in green stood with his arms behind his back. He stood tall and straight, looking into the distance with a determined gaze. He carried a sword with the hilt of a dragon's head, exuding an aura of carefreeness. It was as if he could ride the wind in this snow-filled sky if he wanted to. The man looked solemn, but his carefreeness seemed to be ingrained in his bones. As for the painter, his attainments in painting were extremely high, and he was able to portray this kind of charm. In terms of painting, this was a rare piece of art. However, the more Yunyang looked at the man in the painting, the more familiar he felt. The man's face, demeanor, physique, accessories, and weapons were all things that he had seen before. However, he felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity and intimacy. He could not help but stare at the man for a long time, frowning in thought. Ji Ling became nervous when she saw Yunyang's expression. "You've seen him before? Have you seen this person before?" Yunyang's train of thought was interrupted. He shook his head and said in confusion, "I've never seen this person before, but why do I feel, what do you feel?" Ji Ling pressed on. "I feel, he seems very familiar." Yunyang frowned. "But I can't recall anything at this moment. Besides, I don't have any impression of this face." Ji Ling's eyes shone as she said, "Think carefully." Yunyang racked his brain, thinking about everyone he had met since he could remember. Finally, he shook his head and said helplessly, "No impression." That's strange. Logically speaking, there was no reason for him to forget someone who could give him such a feeling. But why couldn't he remember? Ji Ling bit her lip and looked at him quietly. After a long time, she said, "If you ever remember or meet this person, please tell me. This is my elder brother. My only family in this world." Yunyang agreed hurriedly. Ji Ling excused herself with a heavy heart, but she did not forget to roll up the painting and take it with her. Looking at Ji Ling's silhouette, Yunyang was still thinking about the painting. The person in the painting was very familiar. His state of mind should not be disturbed by anything, but when he saw the painting, he could clearly feel that his heart was in a mess. Chapter 55. Something major had happened in Tiantang City. The third young master of the Shiman family had died in Tiantang City. This was a very serious matter. The entire Tiantang City was on lockdown. On this night, in another inn, a group of people were shouting and yelling, but they had no idea that such an earth-shattering event had happened outside. This was a coliseum. It was a private coliseum, but now, it had obviously been commandeered. There were only 4 people participating in the battle. Each of them had brought along 2 guards. There were 12 people in the spacious arena. 8 of them were watching, not moving, while the remaining 4 were shouting and yelling with all their might. They were agitated, their veins popping out as if they had lost their minds. There were only 4 of them, but they had shouted as if they were in a huge casino. Even the 8 guards at the side were sweating profusely from the shouting of these 4 fellows. It was already the finals. In the arena, a double-headed lion and a silver-tailed, black-furred mystical beast were fighting and tearing each other apart. Bite! Idiot! Ice blade, ice blade! Fireball, oh, fireball, good! Turn around, and fight back. Wah, beautiful! Continue. Bite its tail. Bite its tail. Ice blade, cut its dick with the ice blade. If we succeed, we'll win immediately. F***CK. F***CK 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 F***CK. Oh my god, this is F***CK. Dong Tianlong, did you F***King send someone to put on the double-headed lion's skin? Ayayaya. F***CK. My double-lidded dog eyes are blinded. This is the first time in my life. F***CK. This world is crazy, the F***King lion has started punching. F***CK, let your father rub my eyes. I must be F***King dreaming. In the arena, the double-headed Elysian lion that was originally at a disadvantage suddenly stood up like a human. Its two hind legs were one in front of the other, and its two front claws suddenly came together. With a whoosh, it delivered a palm strike. Before the crowd had time to be surprised, the other front hoofs suddenly clenched into a fist and fiercely punched the eye socket of the silver-tailed centipede. The silver-tailed centipede roared. One of its right eye sockets was visibly turning black. He could not help but stagger. At this moment, the double-headed Elysian lion on the opposite side, still standing on its hind legs, suddenly jumped up, turned around in the air, and kicked the silver-tailed hose's face with its hind legs at lightning speed. At the side, the four fops who were watching exclaimed as if they had seen a ghost. Their 8 eyes almost popped out of their sockets at the same time. Tornado kick. My God. It's really whirlwind kick. Look, it's another kick. Holy shit, is that a side kick? Damn it, I've lived all these years in vain. This bastard side kick is even more accurate than mine. I'm going to faint. Consecutive punches. Roar. Holy sh*t, Mandarin duck chain kick. Holy sh*t, he's an expert. I feel like I've come to a plane full of immortals. Even the lion has become a spirit and learned to punch, and it's F*king punching and kicking. It's a master of a generation. The four fops widened their eyes. At this moment, how could they still care about the outcome of the battle? All of them were shouting at the top of their lungs. Even the 8 experienced guards were like ducks that had been struck dumb by lightning. Their bodies were stiff, their necks stretched, their eyes widened, and their bodies trembled like a sieve. I'm going to faint, a foppish young master clutched his forehead in an exaggerated manner as he fell backwards. I really can't accept this. An 8th grade intermediate mystical beast defeated an 8th grade pinnacle mystical beast. Moreover, when he was lagging behind, he suddenly displayed an unfathomable set of punches and kicks. He turned the tables in an instant and won. I must be F*king dreaming, the outcome of the battle had been decided. The silver-tailed centipede was obviously beaten silly. It clutched its head and whimpered, no longer fighting back. It really could not understand. Was it fighting a double-headed Elysian lion or a human? How could it be played like this? This was F*king against the rules. An even more shocking scene unfolded before their eyes. The double-headed Elysian lion that had already won stood up like a human again. Its 2 front paws were clasped behind its back, the demeanor of an expert as it walked on its hind legs, leisurely circling the field in a victorious manner. Oh. I'm going to faint. One of the fops rolled his eyes and collapsed weakly. I'm already going to faint, I'm already in a deep coma. Who can tell me, this isn't real? Your father is so shocked that even my legs are shivering. Since the beginning of time, we've all learned something new. This is no longer something that can be described as amazing. It's like 100,000 bulls, a million, a billion. Of all the bulls in the universe. Mother, tell me this isn't real. Even Dong Tianlong, who had already won, was tearing at his hair as he looked at the field in disbelief. Suddenly, he placed his hands on his hips and laughed into the sky. Wahahaha. Your father has won. The other 3 fops snapped out of their daze upon hearing his words. This fellow had won? That's right, his double-headed Elysian lion was so demonic. Who else could have won if not him? He even knew how to fight. One should not be afraid of mystical beasts going berserk. One should be afraid of mystical beasts knowing martial arts. This was the F*king truth. Your father has finally won. Dong Tianlong roared, filled with the arrogance of a scoundrel. The 3 of you, come over to your father. Faster. Obediently, the 3 of them, nose to nose, stood up straight with their butts in the air. Faster. Your father wants to lecture you. Wahahaha. The faces of the other 3 fellows turned bitter. They looked at each other with a bitter smile and sighed. They had thought that with the silver-tail lion, they would be able to suppress Dong Tianlong for the rest of their lives. Who would have thought that he would turn the tables in just one night? However, one had to be willing to admit defeat. there was nothing to be said about that. What was more, he had used an 8th level intermediate mystical beast to defeat an 8th level pinnacle mystical beast. This was even more unbelievable. The three of them looked at Dong Tianling helplessly. Count yourself lucky this time, cut the nonsense. Dong Tianling rubbed his palms together, his face filled with hunger. You must have enjoyed beating me up last night. Today is your turn. Think about how you were so pleased with yourselves last night. No matter how this young master begged for mercy, all of you ignored me with sarcasm. You didn't expect this day to come, did you? He laughed proudly. Hurry up. I've told all of you long ago that the wheel of fortune turns. The river flows east for 10 years and west for 30 years. Don't bully the young for being poor. Flowers will bloom again, even a tortoise will have its turn. Stand properly. The three of them snorted, looking as if they were facing death with equanimity. They gathered together, the tips of their noses touching each other as they stood up straight. One of them said coldly, Dong Tianling, don't go overboard. Dong Tianling laughed. I'm not going overboard. I'm just going to follow the bet and beat all of you up until your mothers won't recognize you. Before his words echoed in the air, his leg had already lashed out impatiently. Come, little brother. Don't cry. Even if you cry, I'll beat you up until you become a pig. Bang, bang, bang. Little fellow, don't be unconvinced. You'll still lose. Bang, bang, bang. Come. Little brother, you're so cute. Hurry up and let me kick your butt. Dong Tianling was so pleased that every muscle on his body was dancing as he pummeled the three fellows to his heart's content. He raised his fists and legs to greet his entire body. The expression on his face was especially merciless. The three popinjays were stubborn, their eyes spitting fire from the beginning to the end, but they did not make a sound. They did not even resist, only allowing Dong Tianling to beat them. In just a short while, the three of them had turned into three fresh pig heads. Dong Tianling had a sense of propriety, causing every part of these three fellows' faces to swell to the maximum. The 8 guards were speechless as they watched from the side. He really didn't know what else these rich kids could do, from today onwards. Dong Tianling hollered, everyone, green clothes, green hats, green shoes, green belts, even the scabbards and scabbards have to be green, with an emerald green bamboo branch stuck to their heads. Even the underwear must be green. Understand? Understood. This is how I was treated a year ago. Dong Tianling was filled with joy. Asterisk 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 asterisk, asterisk 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 asterisk. The three good-for-nothings stood up with their pig heads. Is that enough? Why, are you guys still not satisfied? Dong Tianling rubbed his palms together. Bullshit. Among the three of them, one of them, whose eyes could barely be seen, tried his best to open his eyes. Now it's your turn. Tell me, how did your 8th grade middle-level mystical beast defeat my peak-level mystical beast? Even if we lose, you must let us know why we lost. That's what we agreed on. How could Dong Tianling say anything? This was his secret weapon. If these guys learned it, wouldn't it be his turn to be beaten up? Rolling his eyes, he replied, I only found a beast tamer. F***ck your 17 or 18 twists and turns. One of the popinjays scolded, how many beast tamers have we looked for all these years? We've even looked for quite a few beast taming masters. How could there be someone like this? Dong Tianling, if you don't tell the truth, don't blame us for not honoring our bet. I'll tell you if we make another bet tonight. Tonight, we'll bet on next year's. Dong Tianling said in a mischievous tone. Scram. Are you going to tell us or not? You're King thinking too much. Dong Tianling looked conflicted as he said, all right, I'll tell you guys. I met an extraordinary person, but this person has a bad temper and is eccentric. I've spent a lot of effort to get him to help me this time. I've paid a huge price. Cut the crap. What price? Half of all the bets, that's a lot. F***ck. I won anyway. If it were me, I'd give it all to him. Also, I don't know where this extraordinary person is now. Dong Tianleng's eyes darted around. He left after helping me. I couldn't find him no matter how hard I tried. This fellow obviously did not want to tell the truth. The other three looked at each other and said in unison, "Forget it then." In their hearts, however, they were thinking, this fellow can't even lie properly. You want to give him half of the bets, how can you give it to him if you can't find him? We only need to follow you and we'll find him. Humph. I'll find him myself. It's best if the other two don't think of this, then I'll win once too. The four of them brought their guards out of the Colosseum, each with their own ulterior motives. Just as they stepped out, they saw that the courtyard was filled with people. What happened? The four popinjays were shocked. Shiman Wandai is dead. Someone in the courtyard said, "It happened just now." Chapter 56. The wee hours of the morning. The atmosphere in Shiman family's inn was somber. Shiman Wanli's gaze was like a hungry wolf's as he looked at the people in front of him. Have you found out? Only those who fit the criteria have been checked and the name list has been produced. It hasn't been analyzed yet. Speak. There are 7 people who fit the criteria, 2 of them are the most suspicious. One is, the other is Chu Tianlang, and the most suspicious one is this Chu Tianlang. Shiman Wanli's gaze flickered as his voice was cold. Tell me about this Chu Tianlang. Chu Tianlang is the master of the manor of Sirius outside Tiantang City. He's good with long and short swords, tall and muscular, a central figure in the martial world of this generation. In addition, legend has it that Chu Tianlang has an ultimate skill called sleeve concealment. There are mysterious hidden weapons hidden in his sleeves. I wonder if he has other tricks up his sleeves. Shiman Wanli's gaze flickered. Long and short swords, the culprit also uses long and short swords. Sleeve concealment, doesn't that mean the culprit also has sleeve concealment? Also, Chu Tianlang's cultivation base is extremely high, at least a 6th peak cultivation base, 6th peak, the lowest, which means that he's most likely a 7th heaven, maybe even a 7th heaven pinnacle. Even if he's an 8th heaven, it wouldn't be a surprise, would it? Yes. Does OL 3rd have a conflict with this Chu Tianlang? Or perhaps, among those who were bullied and offended by OL 3rd, is there anyone related to Chu Tianlang? On the surface, there's no relationship. But, they both like pretty girls. No relationship, that's the most suspicious one. Shiman Wanli snorted, a sharp glint in his eyes. Second young master. Although Chu Tianlang's characteristics match the culprit's, it's too similar. There must be something fishy about this. It's as if we're trying to frame him, someone said with a frown. Frame him? Shiman Wanli snorted coldly. So what if we're framing him? Chu Tianlang is still our number one target. If it's Chu Tianlang, we'll end this once we get rid of him. If it wasn't Chu Tianlang who did it, we can capture Chu Tianlang and slowly search through his enemies. We can still find the real culprit. Whether it's him or not, we have to get rid of this Chu Tianlang. Shiman Wanli said. We can talk about it. The man hesitated for a moment and suggested. Negotiate, hee. Shiman Wanli sneered. If we act rashly and alert the enemy, are you going to bear the responsibility? The complexion of that expert from the Shiman clan immediately turned ashen. I don't dare. If you don't dare, then shut up. Shiman Wanli snorted and said sternly, if news of this leaks out, I will hold you responsible. That person's face instantly turned pale. He regretted saying those words just now. Shiman Wanli paced back and forth slowly, his eyes flickering. News from the clan has yet to arrive. However, I reckon that the family's people are already on the way. Such a big thing has happened. No matter what, someone has to pay the price. This Chu Tianlang, we must capture him before the family experts arrive. Otherwise, no one will be able to escape responsibility for this matter. Shiman Wanli's voice was gloomy, but everyone present suddenly came to a realization. The main problem now was not to find the real culprit for revenge but to find a scapegoat before the family experts arrived to quell the family's anger. If they didn't even have such a person, then when the people from the clan came, it would really be their unlucky days that had arrived. Time was of the essence. This meant that it had to be Chu Tianlang. Even if he hadn't done it, it had to be him now. Who asked him to fit the bill so well? Chu Tianlang, the information on the manner of Sirius must be quick. Shiman Wanli's expression was cold. Yes. Analyze it quickly. Yes. However, the analysis of the manner of Sirius caused the Shiman clan to suck in a sharp breath. While the manner of Sirius was nothing in the eyes of the entire Shiman clan, they were no match for the manner of Sirius. The manner of Sirius was a behemoth in this area. There were countless experts, and their relationships were complicated and intertwined. The security was tight. Invite young Master Dongfang, young Master Nangong, and young Master Bei with my name card. Shiman Wanli snorted. Let's discuss this. How can the tiny manor of Sirius withstand a single blow from the four noble families? At most, I will owe them a favor. Young Master's plan is brilliant. The sun had just risen when the four noble young masters had finished their discussion. Each of the four noble families would send out 50 experts to annihilate the manor of Sirius. Only a seventh peak elder from the Dongfang family had come, but this person was unwilling to act. Among the remaining experts from the four noble families, the highest cultivation base was only the pinnacle of the sixth peak. If so, how about Elder Shangguan hold the fort? Shiman Wanli asked for the next best thing. That's fine too. In that case, we have 6 sixth peak experts, 8 fifth peak experts, and the rest are all fourth peak experts. That's enough to deal with the manor of Sirius. Dongfang Qingkong fanned himself. If so, why don't we join in the fun as well? We'll have to inform the authorities in Tiantang City. If the government's army appears when we attack the manor of Sirius, it won't be appropriate. Don't worry, I've arranged everything. Thank you, everyone. If there's anything you need me to do in the future, Shiman Wanli, will do my best. Shiman Wanli cupped his fists solemnly. Brother Shiman, you're too kind. This is how it should be. The four noble families help each other and are of the same branch. This is how it should be. When do we begin? In the afternoon. In the afternoon, before the sun sets, we begin. We must end the battle before the sky turns dark. A cruel smile hung on Shiman Wanli's face. I don't want to do it at night, I want to destroy it in the day. I want the world to know what happens to those who provoke the four noble families. Brother Shiman is so domineering, so heroic. Ha ha ha, it's a promise then. In the afternoon. This battle, which would have a far-reaching impact, had suddenly begun without any warning. The manor of Sirius was almost defenseless. Suddenly, they were surrounded by enemies from all sides. Four troops attacked from 4 directions, killing anyone they saw. Blood flowed like waves as they charged towards the center of the manor. Before the manor of Sirius could react, blood had already flowed like a river. Chu Tianlang had a feast with a group of martial artists in the afternoon and was still drunk, sleeping on his bed. Suddenly, cries of war shook the heavens. He sat up abruptly and staggered dizzily. He felt a splitting headache. What's going on? Chu Tianlang hollered, jumping up at the same time. His sword was already in his hand as the mystical art in his body circulated madly. Wisps of white mist that reeked of alcohol emitted from his body. At the same time, he extended his left hand and a chilling force manifested. A cup of tea on the table had already been frozen into ice. He crushed it and applied it to his face. With a shudder, he sobered up immediately. A manor servant scrambled into the hall. Manor lord, it's bad. There are bandits attacking our manor. They're already inside, bandits? Chu Tianlang was at a loss. Where did these bandits come from? After so many years of peace, the manor of Sirius' reputation had spread far and wide. Who dared to stroke the tiger's whiskers? Why would there be a large group of bandits? I don't know where these bandits came from, but their cultivation base is strong. The number of casualties in the manor is uncountable. The enemy is cruel and merciless. Even 5th Master Qin has died in battle. The servant was trembling. Chu Tianlang's eyes were bloodshot as he roared, sprinting out of the hall like a comet. The rapid ringing of bells and whistles had become a cacophony of sounds. The martial force of the manor of Sirius was displayed from all directions as they charged towards the 4 noble families who had charged in, shouting battle cries. Chu Tianlang was already at the highest bell tower of the manor of Sirius in a flash as he looked down. Thick smoke billowed in all directions, waves of blood billowed as battle cries thundered. Corpses littered the ground as far as the eye could see. The enemy was extremely powerful. The ordinary guards of the manor were no match for them, collapsing with a single touch. A few silhouettes dashed out from the manor like lightning. The experts of the manor were on the move. Chu Tianlang howled into the sky as he flew out like a comet, choosing the direction with the most frenzied killing spree as he met the enemy head-on. 2 beams of sword light shot through the sky. Before they had even landed, 2 men had already been sliced into 2 halves. Chu Tianlang landed with a loud crash, his sword slashing viciously onto the sword of the man opposite him. The man could not hold on to his sword and it flew out of his hand. Stop it! Chu Tianlang roared and hollered, who are you people? Why are you attacking the manor of Sirius for no reason? This group of people was murderous with bloodshot eyes. Their attacks were ruthless, even more so than those from the other 3 directions. All of them were highly skilled with profound mystical skills. Chu Tianlang really could not remember when he had offended such people. The other side had indeed stopped. A young man dressed in white walked out with his arms behind his back, his long eyes looking down at Chu Tianlang as he said faintly, "You are Chu Tianlang?" Chu Tianlang held back his anger and said, "That's right. Is there some kind of misunderstanding?" A mocking smile hung on the young man's face. Misunderstanding? Heh heh heh. He sneered as he looked at the twin swords in the man's hands, the long sword in his right hand and the short sword in his left. Then, he sized up Chu Tianlang's muscular body for a moment before he suddenly spun and retreated, shouting, "Kill! Leave no one alive in the manor of Sirius." Chu Tianlang was enraged. "You!" However, the other party's men were already attacking in a frenzy. The leading elder had bloodshot eyes and looked like he had lost his mind. It was as if he had killed Chu Tianlang's father and taken his wife. With a loud roar, he charged forward without a care for his own safety. Clang! Chu Tianlang parried the other's blow and shouted angrily, "You should at least explain why you're doing this. We're all people of the underworld, there must be a cause and effect for everything." However, his voice was quickly drowned in the murderous cries. No one bothered with what he said. In an instant, the manor guests who had followed Chu Tianlang out were all sprawled on the ground. Chapter 57. The manor of Sirius was ablaze. The eyes of the 4 noble families were red with bloodlust while those of the manor of Sirius were red as well. Both sides were in a frenzy. The manor of Sirius was destroyed from east to west, and from south to north. Another dozen or so experts stood on the walls of the manor of Sirius. They calmly attacked and killed the people of the manor of Sirius who tried to escape. It was obvious that they were going to kill every last one of them. Chu Tianlang was enraged, almost losing his mind. He was surrounded and attacked by dozens of experts. Although their cultivation base was a level lower than his, the problem was that there were too many of them. He could not escape at once. The enemy had many men, but the youth in white was standing on the side, directing casually to fill in the gaps. Just as an opening was made and someone was sent flying, another 2 men sealed the opening with all their might under the youth's command, surrounding Chu Tianlang in the center. In other directions, the battle cries had gradually died down. There were groups of people on the left and right, all covered in blood, wielding swords and sabers as they approached. It was all over. Chu Tianlang was filled with endless grief and indignation. There was a commotion in the main building as the sounds of battle rang out. Shocked, Chu Tianlang attacked with all his might to repel the enemy. As he turned to look, he saw that there were already many people wielding swords and sabers, holding a group of women and children hostage as they came towards him. They were Chu Tianlang's family and children. A human head flew through the air and rolled a few times on the ground before it faced the sky. Chu Tianlang howled, his entire body shaking. This head belonged to his sworn brother, the person with the highest cultivation base in the manor of Sirius besides himself. He had always led 10 brothers and was the backbone of the manor of Sirius. His cultivation base was of the 6th peak of mystical cultivation. When the battle began, it was he who had led the experts of the manor to guard the main building. However, his head had already been chopped off. The other 10 brothers seemed to have lost their lives as well. "Stop!" someone shouted. Those who were attacking Chu Tianlang retreated 10 steps back like the tide. Chu Tianlang was covered in blood. Looking around, he saw 1 or 2 young masters leading each direction. While the others were covered in blood, these young masters were untainted by even a speck of dust. Each of them was handsome and elegant, their demeanor outstanding. At this moment, he was looking at him coldly. All the sounds of battle in the surroundings had already disappeared. Only thick smoke billowed in all directions. The entire manor of Sirius was like a dead zone. Only the rustling footsteps of these people could be heard in the surroundings. Looking at his captured family members, Chu Tianlang's heart was chilled. "Who the hell are you people?" Chu Tianlang looked at these people hatefully, his lips quivering. "When have I, Chu Tianlang, ever offended you? What kind of hatred do we have? How could you do such a heartless and inhumane thing?" Despite his extreme rage, Chu Tianlang's voice was surprisingly calm. In his mind, there seemed to be countless planets and universes exploding. His eyes were a little blurry as he looked out. Shiman Wanli took a step forward. "Chu Tianlang, my younger brother had no grudge with you. Why did you kill him then?" Chu Tianlang asked doubtfully, "Who is your younger brother?" He had killed so many people that he couldn't remember them all. Now, he instinctively thought, could it be that I really killed someone and the power behind that person has come to find me? Today, I'll let you die knowing the truth. Shiman Wanli said faintly, "This young master is Shiman Wanli. My younger brother, Shiman Wandai, died a horrible death in your hands last night." Chu Tianlang was taken aback as he suddenly understood. The Shiman family. Then, the other young masters were the young masters of the Dongfang, Nangong, and Bei families? A wave of absurd emotions welled up in him as Chu Tianlang said in surprise, "I didn't go out yesterday. Why did I kill young master Shiman Wandai?" Only after the question left his mouth did he finally come to his senses. He said loudly, "I didn't do it." He finally realized the seriousness of the matter. The Shiman family. If he were to shoulder this responsibility, there would be no other way out other than death. The Shiman family's enormity was not something a mere manor of Sirius could compare to. His fearful gaze looked at the enemies around him. Looking at the unconcealed murderous intent on their faces, looking at his family members who had been captured, he felt utterly disheartened. "You think I'll believe you just because you say it wasn't you?" Shiman Wanli smiled faintly, a sharp murderous intent flashing across his face as he suddenly roared, "Take him down. I want him alive." At his command, everyone around him moved in unison. Saber light flashed as blood spurted into the sky. All of Chu Tianlang's family members were decapitated. Chu Tianlang's guts were shattered as he let out inhuman cries of agony. He lashed out in a frenzy, the long and short swords in his hands ramming into the enemy's formation like a mad tiger. For noble families. I, Chu Tianlang, will never forgive you. The frenzied cries caused the burning flames to tremble crazily. Yin Yang stood at the top of the mountain, looking at the fire and smoke that shot into the sky, his eyes as calm as the autumn waters. Lao Mei, you've broken through to the 6th peak, haven't you? Lao Mei smiled and said, yes, I have. With the help of the mystical stones and mystical crystals that young master has given me, my cultivation base is nearing the 6th peak. Yin Yang pondered for a moment. The enemy has countless experts, a few of them from the 6th peak. Therefore, you only have one chance to strike this time. After this, whether you succeed or not, you must retreat immediately. Don't let yourself be trapped. Lao Mei nodded. I understand. Go then. Remember, once you've completed it, you must disappear immediately. Leave the rest to me. Yes. Lao Mei's form flashed in the air like a ray of light, heading towards the manor of Sirius that was burning in flames. Yin Yang's purple robe flashed and he disappeared from the spot as well. Chu Tianlang fought madly, howling loudly as he dashed left and right like a mad tiger. His mind had lost all rationality due to his hatred. The long sword in his right hand had been broken and he was now holding onto a sword he had snatched. The short sword in his left hand was still gleaming, his body covered in wounds. Pfft! One of the Shiman family's experts took a hit from his sword and landed a heavy blow on his back. Chu Tianlang staggered and spat a mouthful of blood. The sword in his left hand stabbed into the chest of the person in front of him. His back felt another chill and pain as he was stabbed in the waist. I can't die. The thought suddenly arose in his mind. If I die, who will avenge me? Charge out. I have to charge out. He slashed in a frenzy, his eyes on the enemy. However, the enemy had discovered his intentions immediately. This fellow is going to run. Everyone, watch out. Those on the outside, watch out. Chu Tianlang charged a few times but did not manage to break through the encirclement. Instead, a few more wounds were added to his body. Suddenly, he made up his mind and roared into the sky. His body suddenly exuded an extremely cold air. Those around him could not help but feel a bone-piercing chill, almost losing their grip on their weapons. Those who stand in my way shall die. Chu Tianlang howled madly as he sprang up and charged towards the south. The other 4 men leaped up together and charged towards him without fear of death. Chu Tianlang raised his arms, a blinding cold gleam flashed through his sleeves. The 2 Nangong family experts who were charging towards him suddenly fell to the ground without a sound, losing their breath. It's really you. Shiman Wanli's gaze was vicious. Be careful of his secret weapon. Don't let him escape. Chu Tianlang had already charged 100 feet away and was about to reach the top of the wall. The 3 men on top of the wall made up their minds immediately and attacked from the air. Chu Tianlang growled like a wild beast as his long and short swords flew out in a frenzy. The sword light was like a tidal wave, rolling forward as the gleam in his sleeves flickered continuously. Swoosh, 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 3 silhouettes flipped over and fell. Although they had been prepared, Chu Tianlang's 2 secret weapons were faster than they had imagined. They could not avoid them no matter what. 7 to 8 men rushed over from the side. Chu Tianlang's face was pale. Shooting 5 cold gleams from his sleeve seemed to have taken a toll on him, but he had also successfully killed 5 of the enemy's experts, reducing the pressure on him. Those who stand in my way shall die. Chu Tianlang roared as he leaped into the air, pouncing towards the wall. This wall had been designed by Chu Tianlang himself. It was 50 feet tall and extremely sturdy. It had originally been designed to guard against external enemies and ensure safety, but now, such a height had become Chu Tianlang's lethal height. He was in midair, surrounded by flashes of hidden weapons that shot towards him. Some of them had even thrown their swords and sabers out of their hands. He let out a long howl and waved his 2 swords crazily, knocking down all the hidden weapons. However, in this short period of time, there were already 3 people standing in the gap that had originally appeared on the wall. There were even 2 more people, one on the left and one on the right, coming from the sky with a strong gust of wind. A saber and a sword shot out an intense glint of saber and sword energy. Arg! Chu Tianlang roared as his long and short swords met the opponent's sabers and swords at the same time. He had wanted to use the momentum to escape, but the 2 men were fighting with their lives on the line. There was no turning back. The sabers and swords were blocked, but they abandoned them immediately, pouncing forward and increasing their strength with their fists. Chu Tianlang howled in grief and indignation. His body in midair had nowhere to borrow strength from as he was smashed to the ground by his opponent. From all around, more than a dozen people pounced on Chu Tianlang, entangling him. Chu Tianlang howled madly, the gleam in his sleeves flashing continuously. Swoosh, 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 6 experts had died under his mysterious hidden weapons. However, he knew that he was finished. This hidden weapon had never been used lightly, because each time it was used, it consumed too much of his energy. His limit was to use it 7 times in a single battle. Now, the number of times he had used it had far exceeded that. His energy was almost completely depleted. The wall that he had built was now too high for him to reach. The enemy's combat power had only been partially depleted. There were still a few experts who had been watching the battle with composure. Once these people struck, he would be dead for sure. I refuse to accept this. Chu Tianlang roared in his heart. However, his movements were becoming slower and slower. His body was continuously injured, his vision was starting to blur. If the battle were to end now, Chu Tianlang would faint on the spot. He was already at the end of his rope, it was only the indignation in his heart that kept him going. Harder. A cruel glint flashed in Shiman Wanli's eyes. Take down Chu Tianlang. The people who were surrounding Chu Tianlang answered in unison, their fighting spirit soaring. The enemy was already at the end of his tether, it was the best time to make a contribution. They surrounded him at the same time. It's over. Chu Tianlang felt the sudden increase in pressure, despair filling him. Chapter 58. The figure was masked in black, tall and straight. Like a ghost, he had appeared on the wall of the yard in the dusk. The moment he appeared, before anyone had noticed, he raised his right hand abruptly. Countless rays of cold light shot out like the petals of a celestial maiden. At the same time, he hollered, Chu Tianlang. Chu Tianlang turned his head at the sound, his spirits lifted immediately. Although he didn't know what was going on, he instinctively realized that his reinforcements had arrived. Chu Tianlang was not the only one who had realized it, everyone present had as well. However, the hundreds of hidden weapons that the man in black had shot out earlier had injured many of them. The rest of them were flustered as well. In the blink of an eye, the person on the wall shook his hand and a rope flew out like a swimming dragon. Before anyone could react, it was already in front of Chu Tianlang. Catch him. Without the need to shout, Chu Tianlang had already rushed forward and grabbed the rope. The person on top of the wall exerted his strength and Chu Tianlang's body floated up into the air. The person on top of the wall had already disappeared. Chu Tianlang was like a large kite suspended in the air with a rope below him. The person pulling the rope was running forward in a frenzy. The last ray of light from the horizon had finally fallen. Night had finally come. Chase. Shiman Wanli almost crushed his teeth from gritting them. Just as they were about to succeed, someone had appeared to disrupt their plans. Everyone sprung up at the same time and flew to the top of the wall. Chu Tianlang was still floating in the air amidst the approaching dusk while the person below was pulling on the rope with all his might, sprinting towards the forest ahead like a flash of lightning. Stay! Beams of sword light shot out as hundreds of silhouettes gave chase with all their might. However, these people were exhausted from the battle while the person was waiting at ease, pulling further and further away from them. By the time the group reached the edge of the forest, they had completely lost track of Chu Tianlang and the mysterious person. Once these two people had entered the forest, they were like water droplets falling into the ocean, vanishing immediately. Search carefully. Shiman Wanli's expression was grim. Place a few more people on the treetops and keep a lookout in all directions. Once there's any trace, sound the alarm immediately. Yes. He had just entered the forest. Chu Tianlang felt his body plummet in a straight line as the person below caught him. Just as Chu Tianlang was about to speak, he felt himself still falling. It turned out that there was actually a tunnel under the fallen leaves. In a flash, the two of them had already entered the tunnel. Then, there was a silent flip above them, and countless fallen leaves once again covered the place. In the tunnel, the mysterious man pulled Chu Tianlang along as he sprinted forward. Who are you? You saved my life. Chu Tianlang was panting. Don't speak. A slightly aged voice said hurriedly, Chu Tianlang, remember this clearly. The risk this time is too great. The other party is one of the 4 great clans, and they are very powerful. If we don't use this tunnel, we will definitely be caught. So, after we get out of the tunnel, I will think of a way to distract some of the pursuers. As for you, immediately head in the direction of Jadeite Bamboo Mountain. It's only a dozen or so li away. Even if you run out of breath, you must enter Jadeite Bamboo Mountain. There will be someone there to receive you. Got it? Chu Tianlang's heart skipped a beat. Got it. Who are you? It doesn't matter who I am. The mysterious man said, the exit is right in front. You must be prepared immediately. As he spoke, he took out a pill from his robe and stuffed it into Chu Tianlang's mouth. This can help you unleash your potential. Chu Tianlang, it's up to you whether you live or die now. The tunnel had come to an end. Begin. With a stretch of his hand, the layer of soil above flipped up soundlessly as he pulled Chu Tianlang along and flew out. With a push of his right hand, he sent Chu Tianlang flying. Run. Chu Tianlang realized at once that he was facing the direction of Jadeite Bamboo Mountain. The other party's push had allowed him to float hundreds of feet away without much effort. He stooped down immediately, holding his breath as he sprinted in the direction of Jadeite Bamboo Mountain. Turning his head urgently, he saw the mysterious man sprinting in the opposite direction. There was a long rope in his hand, and there was a human silhouette above the rope. It was like he was flying a kite as he sprinted thousands of feet away. Chu Tianlang heaved a sigh of relief. Frantic shouts came from behind, over there. Over there. He's still floating on the rope. Go after him. A portion of the people gave chase in a frenzy. There were also people standing on the treetops or watching from the sky who had spotted Chu Tianlang who was running in the opposite direction. There's one over there too. They've separated, one of them must be fake. Split half of the people over there. Chu Tianlang sprinted forward, sticking close to the ground. He could feel his heart beating faster and faster, his mind growing dizzier as he felt like he could no longer hold on. He held on forcefully, suppressing the pressure that was threatening to burst his heart as he charged into Jadeite Bamboo Mountain. His pursuers were getting closer and closer. Just as he dashed into the mountain, he could no longer hold it in and fell to the ground. Yin Yang had been waiting here for a long time. He grabbed Chu Tianlang and said in a low voice, "Don't make a sound." With a flip of his body, a hole appeared beside him. Both of them tumbled downwards. At the same time, Yin Yang stomped his foot upwards and the hole disappeared. The hole was hundreds of feet deep. There seemed to be an exit in the distance, glowing faintly. The moment they reached the bottom, Yin Yang stretched out his hand and grabbed. A hole about a man's height from the bottom appeared. He grabbed Chu Tianlang and dashed into it. Then, the hole disappeared. After entering, Yin Yang raised his palm and struck the back of Chu Tianlang's head. Chu Tianlang fainted without a sound. Yin Yang dashed in with his body. As he dashed in, the outer layer of soil fell continuously, covering the hole completely. The hole curved upwards and stopped about 10 feet away from the ground. At this point, Yun Yang was already exhausted. However, he took in a deep breath and turned into a cloud of mist. One was unconscious while the other had turned into a cloud of mist, soundless. After a round of searching, the pursuers finally found a hole that led downwards among the rocks. Without hesitation, they gave chase, whistling all the way out from the other exit of the hole. Shouts and shouts rang out continuously. Finally, after another quarter of an hour, there was no sound. Yun Yang did not relax, he remained motionless. After another hour, he finally recovered from his cloud form. Taking in a deep breath, he allowed Emmy to send a breath of vitality from his subconscious to relieve the pressure on him. Then, he turned into a cloud of mist again. Another 4.5 hours had passed. It was already the second half of the night when Yun Yang finally appeared on the ground carefully with Chu Tianlang in his hand. The night breeze blew, it was cold and cheerless. Obviously, the people from the 4 noble families had left. Yun Yang heaved a sigh of relief. Looking down, he saw that although Chu Tianlang was unconscious, his expression was relaxed, like a burden had been lifted from his shoulders. It was obvious that he was thankful that he had escaped with his life. A cold smirk hung on the corners of Yun Yang's lips. Relaxed? Very soon, you'll realize that you'd rather be killed by Shiman Wanli and the other 4 noble families than fall into my hands. Yun Yang walked for a distance with extreme caution. The sound of wheels rumbling could be heard from afar. Lao Mei had reverted to his original appearance and was driving a carriage over. On top of it were bags of goods. Yun Yang stuffed Chu Tianlang into a big bag and placed him on the carriage, using a few more bags of goods to hold him down. Yun Yang then turned and left. Lao Mei drove the carriage leisurely all the way to the city gate. Along the way, he came across people from the 4 noble families who were frantically searching for something like headless flies. They did not realize that their target was right under their noses, sitting in a carriage and entering Tiantang City. The carriage passed, leaving a trail of medicinal fragrance. Inside were all genuine medicinal herbs. Shiman Wanli and the rest wore grim expressions. Looking at the manner of Sirius that was in shambles, they were enraged. Everyone had been killed but only the most important person, Chu Tianlang, had escaped. It was a complete waste of effort. Young master, we've found Chu Tianlang's treasury, a subordinate reported. Treasury? The young master's eyes shone. Even Shiman Wanli, who was in a fit of rage, turned his head to look. How much good stuff is there? Shiman Wanli asked in a reserved manner. Good stuff, there's a lot of it. The subordinate was visibly excited. He had not expected that a mere manor of Sirius would have so much wealth and so much good stuff. Without waiting for a reply, the few young masters turned and walked away in unison. Brother Shiman, this wealth, divide it equally. Shiman Wanli's expression did not change. This isn't appropriate, is it? We're all here to help you, yet you want to divide it equally with us? Our Shiman family has suffered the most this time. It's still a loss to divide it equally with everyone else, nonsense. This is your family's matter. You have lost many people, don't tell me we haven't. Besides, it's only right that someone from your family died, but those from our family are innocent. F***CKU. What do you mean by it's only right that someone from my family died? Do you F***King know how to speak like a human? Why? Isn't that the case? Shiman Wanli, what do you want? Tell me. Make it clear first, I won't do anything less. The 4 noble families quarreled over how much they should divide the loot. However, it was only a quarrel and would not escalate to the point of fighting. After a bout of argument, Shiman Wanli had no choice but to compromise. After a clear count, the Shiman family will take 20%. The remaining 80% will be divided among the 3 families. How about that? That's more like it. However, whoever sees Chu Tianlang in the future, don't forget to capture him. He's our common enemy now. Of course. Ha! Everyone was happy. At this time, Lao Mei had already driven his carriage into Tiantang City and into the residence of Yun. Chapter 59. Young master, the goods have arrived, Lao Mei said. Bring them to the warehouse. Yin Yang nodded. Lao Mei smiled. Fang Mafei had already come out. Fang Mafei had recovered quite a bit. Although he still could not fight, it was no longer a problem for him to assist Lao Mei. At this rate, it would only take a little more than a month for him to fully recover. Fang Mafei was very satisfied with the progress. Logically speaking, he would have to lie in bed for at least a year with such injuries, and his cultivation base would be damaged as well. Now that he was here, not only could it be shortened to a little more than a month, his energy of origin had also been replenished. Yin Yang thought about it and went to the secret chamber first. Li Changqiu was still tied up inside. Seeing Yin Yang enter, his gaze flickered, but he did not speak. However, the fact that he did not curse out loud meant that his impression of Yin Yang was actually not bad. It was mainly because of Yin Yang's previous deception that had played a huge role. Elderly, I'm very sorry, I can't remove the restraints on you. Yin Yang poured a cup of water and fed it to Li Changqiu as he spoke apologetically. He. I don't think you dare. Li Changqiu chuckled and said, however, this old man has no intention of leaving this place alive. If you can give this old man a quick death when the time comes, that would be good enough. Yin Yang chuckled humorlessly and said, there's no news from above, elderly has to wait. Li Changqiu sighed and said, I know. He looked at Yin Yang, hesitating to speak. Yin Yang took a deep breath and said, now, the Manor of Sirius has launched an operation. It's said that the Manor of Sirius has been uprooted. Great! Li Changqiu cheered excitedly and said, what about Chu Tianlang? Yin Yang smiled. Elder Li's wish can be fulfilled. Chu Tianlang has been captured alive and is being sent here now. When I'm done with the interrogation, Elder Li will be able to meet the master of the Manor of Sirius. Li Changqiu laughed heartily, filled with glee. Chu Tianlang actually dared to betray me. He must have never thought that such a day would come. Although he has harmed this old man, his life's work, his life, has been buried in this old man's hands as well. Ha 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 ha, this is karma. This is karma. Yin Yang smiled and said, however, I will report to my superiors about Elder Li's cooperation. I implore them to spare Elder Li's life. He said sincerely, but I can't guarantee whether I can do it or not. I really hope that someone like Old Li can survive. Li Changqiu looked at Yin Yang playfully. Aren't you afraid that I'll take revenge on you if I survive? Yin Yang smiled faintly and said with unusual sincerity, yes, but we appreciate each other. Li Changqiu heaved a long sigh, his voice low, I won't be able to survive. Even if the concourse of the underworld doesn't kill me, the Four Seasons Tower will silence me. This old man is already a dead man. Yin Yang sighed as well and said sympathetically, is there no other way? Can't I hide my identity? Li Changqiu was silent for a moment before he said, in this world, no one can escape the Four Seasons Tower's pursuit. No one. Yin Yang was silent for a moment. Was the Four Seasons Tower really so powerful and mysterious? He forced a smile and said, at least we can still talk now. Oh right, Old Li, there's something I don't understand as well. I hope Old Li can help me. Li Changqiu asked, what is it? Obviously, Yin Yang's preferential treatment had melted the ice in Li Changqiu's heart. Their cooperation was getting better and better. Yin Yang said, according to what I know, the ambush of the 9 Supremes at Tianxian Cliff was the Four Seasons Tower's doing. It also started in Tiantang City. I'm very confused about this matter. Li Changqiu kept quiet and did not speak. Yin Yang ignored him and seemed to be talking to himself. He said, logically speaking, although the 9 Supremes are powerful, they're only a few generals of a country. Although they can kill the generals and capture the flags of thousands of troops and decide the outcome, their cultivation base may not be that brilliant or outstanding when placed in the martial world. Li Changxiu was silent for a moment before he said, "You're wrong about this. You don't know how terrifying the 9 Supremes are." Yin Yang said, "Oh?" Li Changxiu said, "The ability of the 9 Supremes is indeed not high. If it's just based on mystical qi, each of them is only average. Even the leader of the 9 Supremes was only at the 5th peak of mystical qi. They couldn't even withstand a single blow." "You're right. Although the 5th peak of mystical qi is already considered an expert, aren't they still like ants in the eyes of a true expert?" Yin Yang said, puzzled. "But the 9 Supremes have other powers. Once they grow, they'll be a real threat." Li Changxiu sighed, "The 9 Heavens domain is not a place to train martial world experts. The true strength of the 9 Supremes isn't how strong they are. It's those strange powers that belong to the 9 Supremes themselves, those unimaginable abilities that are truly terrifying. This. I don't understand." Yin Yang scratched his head. "From the battles that the 9 Supremes have participated in, the power that the 9 Supremes can currently display is only to create chaos for the enemy. To cause the enemy to be unable to form an army or a formation. As long as the 9 Supremes make a move, Supreme Earth's force of thick earth, for example, can cause the ground beneath the enemy's feet to suddenly change shape, collapse, rise, or even overturn. This isn't very useful in the martial world, but when 2 armies are facing off, it's enough to be fatal." Li Changxiu explained. "This isn't bad," Yin Yang said. "Also, Supreme Flame and Supreme Water share the same principle. What if there's a fire in the military camp? Or if the rations are raided and burned out instantly? Or if there's a sudden flood that hits the military formation and causes the enemy to sink deep into the mud? The others are all the same. Supreme Wind can work with anyone. For example, if Supreme Flame sets fire but the wind is not right, Supreme Wind can change it and blow the wind in the opposite direction. How effective is it? As for Supreme Thunder, the power of lightning, thunder, and fire, can be used in a battle formation? Ha! This is the terror of the 9 Supremes in a battle formation. Therefore, the 9 Supremes can decide the life and death of hundreds of thousands of soldiers. However, if it's a one-on-one battle in the martial world, they might not be so famous. Do you understand now? The most powerful thing about the 9 Supremes is their mysteriousness. No one knows the real identity of the 9 Supremes, their real faces. They don't even know each other. This is the scariest part. If the 9 Supremes were to really grow, even their mystical qi cultivation base would be more profound. Think about it, which country's army in this world could be the empire of Yutang's match? Yin Yang said, "But this is not the reason the 4 Seasons Tower wants to go against the 9 Supremes, is it? No matter how strong the 9 Supremes are, they're not a threat to the 4 Seasons Tower." Li Changxiu thought about it and said, "I really don't know the exact reason. However, since they've done something like this, there must be a reason." Yin Yang was slightly disappointed. Li Changxiu did not know anything about it either. What level did one have to be in order to be qualified to know this secret? However, Elder Li's side was a crucial link in dealing with the 9 Supremes. A crucial link? Not necessarily. Li Changxiu chuckled. "We've only provided some information to deal with the 9 Supremes, and it's definitely not core information. Yin Yang guffawed and said, "It's not an easy task to get information about the 9 Supremes." Li Changxiu snorted coldly. "Chu Tianlang is in charge of this. God knows where he got the information from. That's why this bastard has always been unconvinced by this old man. This bastard who gave birth to a son without a pair of eyes. Chu Tianlang was in charge of this?" Yin Yang squinted his eyes and said with a smile, "I will make Chu Tianlang speak." A cruel smile hung on Li Changxiu's face as he said, "If you can't get anything out of him, come and tell this old man. This old man can teach you a few interrogation techniques. Even if he's made of steel, he can tell you whatever you want to know with the techniques I've mentioned. Yin Yang smiled. I'll definitely come and ask Elderly for some advice then. Li Changqiu laughed. It was as if he could already see Yin Yang using his own methods to torture Chu Tianlang. In another secret chamber, Chu Tianlang woke up slowly. Opening his eyes, his first impression was that he was already safe. However, what was this thing on him? Why had he been tied up? These strips of mystical beast tendons were tied securely to such a thick pillar. His cultivation base had been restrained as well. What was going on? Wasn't he one of us? He had saved me, he was obviously one of us. Chu Tianlang was bewildered, not knowing what was going on. Is anyone there? Chu Tianlang called out loudly. Only when his voice left his mouth did he realize that his voice was hoarse, as if his throat had been torn apart. After calling out twice, the sound of footsteps could be heard from outside. Following which, a young man dressed in a purple robe walked in from the outside. He was as elegant as a jade. Under the dim light of the oil lamp, the face of this youth dressed in purple gave Chu Tianlang the impression of an elegant and beautiful youth. However, he was immediately enraged. Who are you? Why am I here? Yin Yang smiled strangely. Who am I? Chu Tianlang, is this the attitude you should have when speaking to your savior? If it weren't for me, you would have fallen into the hands of the Shiman family long ago. How dare you question me now? Chu Tianlang was confused. You saved me? Nonsense. Yin Yang snorted. Did you lose your memory? Can't remember? Chu Tianlang said angrily, since you saved me, why did you tie me up? If I didn't tie you up, how could I heal you? Yin Yang said angrily, you were like AF** King living Yi Yang, wriggling here and there with immense strength. If I didn't tie you up and seal your cultivation base, would I have waited for you to torture yourself to death? Chu Tianlang was slightly embarrassed. Compared to how he had struggled when he was unconscious. Looking at the wounds on his body, he could not help but say apologetically, I see. I'm sorry. Can you release me now? My limbs are uncomfortable being tied up. Chapter 60. He immediately felt that something was amiss. Chu Tianlang lifted his head abruptly, his gaze as sharp as a hawk's. Who are you? The corners of Yin Yang's lips curled into a cruel smile as he said slowly, I can tell you clearly that firstly, I'm not His Majesty's man. Secondly, I'm not His Highness's man. Thirdly, I'm not from the Four Seasons Tower. The terror in his eyes intensified. Chu Tianlang was sensitive enough to know that he had fallen into a trap. A vicious trap. He had thought that he would be safe if he could escape from the four noble families. Now, it seemed that he had fallen into an even worse situation. At the very least, he knew who the four noble families were and his background. However, he did not know the background of this youth in front of him at all. Your family members are all dead. Yin Yang's slow voice enunciated each word clearly, therefore, if I want to know something, I can only start from you. I can't threaten you. His eyes looked at Chu Tianlang like an icy lake. So, I hope you're prepared. Chu Tianlang chuckled and said sternly, try and see if you can get anything useful from me. Yin Yang said with a grin, of course, of course. Actually, I don't wish for you to tell me everything after a slap. That way, it won't be fun and there won't be any sense of accomplishment in applying what you've learned. Chu Tianlang sneered, I may not have much else but I do have a body full of tough bones. I want to know how tough your bones are. Yin Yang said gently, don't you feel your entire body going limp now? Chu Tianlang was taken aback. Then, he tried to sense his body with his cultivation, only to realize that his mystical skill was nowhere to be found. His dantian was completely empty. Furthermore, the muscles all over his body seemed to have relaxed. Even his bones were a little soft and sore. Even his teeth were soft. It was accompanied by waves of dizziness in his head. Chu Tianlang was shocked, suddenly recalling something as he raised his head. Immortal's odium? Yin Yang snapped his fingers. Master of the Manor of Sirius indeed, you even know about Immortal's odium. I'm impressed. Chu Tianlang's expression was one of despair. Yin Yang moved a stool over and sat in front of him, saying, there's still about the time it takes to brew a cup of tea before the Immortal's odium fully erupts and you're at my mercy. During this time, we can have a good chat. Chu Tianlang clamped his mouth shut, the hatred in his heart boiling. He even closed his eyes. She was unwilling to see Yin Yang, unwilling to hear his voice. The Immortal's hate. It was rumored that this was an extremely vicious cultivation dispersing medicine. Ordinary cultivation dispersing medicine could restore one's cultivation base after its effect wore off. Or rather, there was an antidote that could save him. But after being afflicted with the Immortal's hatred, it was impossible. The moment the Immortal's odium entered his body, all of his cultivation had vanished into thin air. Even the deities in heaven would become mortals at the mercy of others if they were afflicted with the Immortal's hatred. This was the origin of the name Immortal's hatred. He was already ruined. Chu Tianlang knew this very well. Even if he could make it out alive, he would still be doomed. I didn't want to deal with you. Master of the Manor of Sirius. Yin Yang did not care if Chu Tianlang was looking or listening. He continued to speak. After all, you, Chu Tianlang, have a name. Although you've done a lot of evil and have committed too many crimes to be listed, it's not up to me to interfere. Chu Tianlang almost wanted to cover his ears, not wanting to hear this hateful voice. However, Yin Yang's voice was like a demonic tune that pierced through his brain and into his ears. Hearing this, he could not help but want to ask, King don't want to deal with me, don't want to care about your father's business, then what's the point of this today? Yin Yang continued, but after I heard someone talk about you, I decided immediately that I'm going to get rid of you. Chu Tianlang could not hold it in anymore and asked, who? Yin Yang smiled amiably, the 19th of the first month. This fellow had betrayed Li Changxiu without batting an eyelid. The 19th of the first month. Chu Tianlang wanted to grit his teeth, but they were already sore. He feigned nonchalance and said, what 19th of the first month? What does it have to do with me? Yin Yang smiled. What do you think? The 21st of the first month? Chu Tianlang's body went limp. The other party could even say the 21st of the first month. What else did he not know about him? Who are you? Who are you? Who are you? Who are you? Chu Tianlang was almost driven mad. Since when did he have such a terrifying enemy? Where did he come from? His identity was a top secret. How would he know? Who I am, you'll know when I want to tell you. Yin Yang said gently, but you have to be obedient. Chu Tianlang glared at him fiercely, spitting out a mouthful of spittle. Yin Yang tilted his head and the spittle brushed past his ear. In the next moment, he had already stretched out his hand and said with a smile, how dare you spit at me? Do you know what the price of a mouthful of spit is? One hand touched Chu Tianlang's body, from his neck to his shoulder, all the way to his right arm. Then, two fingers pinched Chu Tianlang's pulse. Chu Tianlang paled. The devil's cramp. This was the technique that Yin Yang was using now. Unless one was an experienced and knowledgeable martial artist, one would never know how to use it. It was a punishment that would cause one to pale at the mere mention of it. Before he could say anything, he saw a vein suddenly bulge on his arm. Then, it began to twist and turn in his muscles, twisting and turning. The extreme agony made Chu Tianlang raise his head, about to cry out loud. However, Yin Yang stuffed a rag into his mouth and said faintly, don't scream. I like peace and quiet. The tendons on his arm began to rotate from his arm to his shoulder and neck. His bones crackled as they were rotated by his own tendons. His shoulder seemed to have split into two, one had almost reached his left shoulder while the other bulged high, almost at the same level as his forehead. His elbow was flipped over, the tip of his elbow actually twisted to the front. Beads of sweat rolled down Chu Tianlang's face. His face was completely contorted, his eyes almost bulging out of their sockets, filled with blood vessels. He wanted to scream but he could not. The muscles on his face were contorted in spasm. Does it feel good? Yin Yang's voice was soft as he said, if it doesn't feel good, I can add your left arm and both your legs as well. Chu Tianlang's legs were stretched out, his eyes looking at Yun Yang in agony. His teeth were chattering. I can't bear to watch this. Yin Yang slapped his palm and Chu Tianlang's tendons returned to their original state. He panted heavily, moaning. Yin Yang removed the rag from his mouth and put it aside, saying, Chu Tianlang, do you still want to spit? He moved his face forward and said, come, spit again for me to see. Looking at Yun Yang's handsome face, Chu Tianlang suddenly shuddered. This was a devil. He had executed such a cruel and vicious method, yet there was not the slightest change in his expression and gaze. Looking at the face that was moving closer, Chu Tianlang really wanted to spit again. However, after thinking for a long time, he did not. Now that's a good boy. Yin Yang said with a grin and patted Chu Tianlang's face, saying, listen to my question carefully next. It doesn't matter if you answer or not. If you can't hear me clearly, then all your limbs will have a devil's cramp. Chu Tianlang howled at the sky with extreme hatred. Yin Yang was unmoved as he said, I believe you remember the incident at Tianxian Cliff clearly. Let me ask you, where did you get the information about the 9 Supremes? Chu Tianlang's eyes widened suddenly, looking at Yun Yang as if he had seen a ghost. Did you hear me clearly? Yin Yang asked kindly. Yes. Chu Tianlang could sense the madness in Yin Yang's calm eyes sensitively and answered involuntarily. Okay, go ahead. Chu Tianlang panted heavily and suddenly made up his mind. I don't know anything. It's best that you don't know. Yin Yang smiled. I like unyielding men. Stretching out his hand, the rag was stuffed back into his mouth as he said considerately, it'll hurt later. Be careful not to bite your tongue. Look at how considerate I am. His hands danced swiftly as the devil's cramp went through his limbs at the same time. Chu Tianlang trembled violently. Yin Yang turned and walked out calmly. There's no hurry, Chu Tianlang. I guarantee that you can live for at least 10 years here with me. We still have 10 years, we can spend it slowly. You have to believe me, as long as I'm not willing, you won't die. Extreme fear was written all over Chu Tianlang's face. He wanted to speak but the excruciating pain had already washed over him like a tidal wave. He watched helplessly as Yun Yang walked out, his eyes pleading. Yin Yang had already opened the door. I'm a soft-hearted person, I can't bear to see others suffer so I'm going out. Out of sight, out of mind. Manner Master Chu, enjoy yourself, there's no need to thank me. Thinking about it, he suddenly took a few steps back. With his back facing Chu Tianlang, he tapped a finger accurately on Chu Tianlang's temple. A cooling sensation seeped through the finger. I almost forgot, this force can keep you awake, only then did he walk out slowly. Devil! Devil! Chu Tianlang cursed inwardly. However, the pain was like a tidal wave, each wave higher than the last. He could not even make a whimper as he struggled in agony, listening to the bones in his body colliding with each other. For the first time, Chu Tianlang understood what it meant to be worse than death. After a quarter of an hour, Yin Yang finally came in from the door. He patted Chu Tianlang's body to relieve his pain and said with a smile, Manner Master Chu, are you willing to answer now? Chu Tianlang panted greedily, breathing in the air greedily. His eyes were lifeless as he felt the last bit of strength in his body being taken away by the endless pain. Yin Yang said with a smile, Your bones are really tough. Still not talking? Chapter 61. Give you a quick death? Yin Yang said, I like a quick death too. Then let me ask you, where did you get the information about the 9 Supremes? I I got it from the 19th of the first month. I'm not lying. Chu Tianlang was trembling. The 19th of the first month, there's a mole in the Board of War. Yun Yang nodded and said, to commend your dishonesty, I'll give you an hour this time. Once again, the devil's spasm was unleashed. This time, other than his limbs, his spine was affected as well. Then, Yin Yang ignored Chu Tianlang's pleas. Ignoring Chu Tianlang's pleas, I'll talk. Instead, he covered Chu Tianlang's mouth and turned to leave. This half an hour was a whole hour. When Yin Yang returned, Chu Tianlang could only exhale but not inhale. He was like a puddle of mud, the kind that had a lot of mud. His gaze towards Yin Yang was beseeching. Yin Yang helped him with the technique slowly and said faintly, did you really get the information from the 19th of the first month? I can let you have a taste of this 20 times a day, leaving 4 hours for you to recover. Don't worry, 10 years is a long time. No, not the 19th of the first month. Chu Tianlang's face was ashen as he said anxiously, it was someone else but I don't know his identity. Besides, he's not from the Four Seasons Tower, I'm very sure of this. Tell me. Yin Yang sat down and said faintly, looks, aura, traits, weapons, figure, tell me about them. Chu Tianlang tried his best to recall, tears streaming down his face. He had thought that he was a tough nut to crack, able to withstand any punishment. However, he had overestimated himself. He really could not withstand this kind of punishment. If he still had mystical skill, it would be more or less the same, but it had already been dissolved. Of course, the last straw that broke Chu Tianlang's back was that he had no more worries or hope to live. His family was all gone and he was already crippled. What was there to hold on for? That's a tall and sturdy man. He's masked, but I can feel the unique iron-blooded aura of the army. He's very powerful. He should be someone with great power. At the very least, he should be a great general. He's about 8 feet tall. The joints of his palms are very wide. His voice is deep but deep. It seems like he's trying to hide it. When I addressed him, I only called him Shengguan. I didn't know his real name. The smell of blood on his body is very thick. It's a kind of fiendish aura that comes from killing many people. Chu Tianlang tried hard to recall. Yin Yang squinted slightly, searching for this person in his mind according to Chu Tianlang's description. He was now absolutely sure that Chu Tianlang had not lied to him. Everything he said was true. The look in his eyes had already collapsed, and his pupils were already scattered. This could not be faked. High position and authority, experienced war and slaughter, very dignified, very tall, very muscular, very muscular. Yin Yang filtered through each of them in his mind. Of course, they also had to consider whether this person had changed his appearance. Therefore, the people that Yin Yang had filtered out were only at the stage of suspicion. What else? Yin Yang asked eerily. That's all. Chu Tianlang thought hard and shook his head blankly. Bullsh *T. Yin Yang said coldly, whose people are they? Chu Tianlang, do you dare say that you don't know? Chu Tianlang shuddered and said, I'm guessing that it's the prince's men, but it's hard to tell who's the one who's supporting them. At first, I thought they were the crown prince's men, but later on, I realized that it's ambiguous and doesn't seem like it. Yin Yang frowned. This answer was somewhat out of his expectations. He had almost locked onto the crown prince as his target. Why was there another twist here? What proof do you have? Yin Yang asked. Young master may know that His Highness the Crown Prince and I are considered acquaintances. His Highness the Crown Prince had also paid a special visit to the manor of Sirius to thank me for saving his life. Before the new year, His Highness the Crown Prince had made a trip there to relax. He seemed to have a lot on his mind, sighing over the 9 Supremes' deaths and hating the imperial court situation to the core. I saw that His Highness the Crown Prince's true feelings didn't seem to be an act. Chu Tianlang mused, it was then that I started to have doubts. Yin Yang's brows were locked in a deep frown. His brows were furrowed tightly. When you saved His Highness the Crown Prince from danger, was it a combination design? Or did you design it yourself? Or was it really a coincidence? Yunyang asked. It was a combination design. Chu Tianlang revealed everything he knew. A combination design. Yunyang said, then how did you know His Highness the Crown Prince's whereabouts? Chu Tianlang said sadly, there's someone of ours beside His Highness the Crown Prince. I don't know who this person is, but he must be one of His Highness the Crown Prince's most important advisors. Yunyang nodded. What else do you know? For example, in your one-way contact on the 21st of the first month, do you still know who your downlink is? Who's your downlink? How many more do you know? Chu Tianlang's eyes were filled with struggle. Opening his eyes, he saw Yunyang looking at him with a gentle and kind expression. He could not help shuddering and said, I know. On the 19th of the first month, it's a blacksmith. On the 20th of the first month, it's a general in the military, his nickname is Shinbei. I've contacted this one before, but he was also masked then. From under his mask, I could see his curly beard, even a little gray. On the 22nd of the first month, it's a eunuch in the palace. I don't know his real name as well as the rest. Even Yunyang's expression changed. The Four Seasons Tower's infiltration was so terrifying. What Yunyang knew now was that there was a left imperial censor, an advisor to His Highness the Crown Prince, an unknown general, a palace eunuch, a military general with the nickname of Jinbei, a blacksmith, and the master of the manner of Sirius in the martial world. It was terrifying to the extreme. The Four Seasons Tower was lurking in every industry. However, this Chu Tianlang obviously knew more than the 19th of the first month. Yunyang thought to himself, no wonder Chu Tianlang was unconvinced, no wonder Li Changqiu was wary. What you know seems to be beyond the scope of your authority, Yunyang said coldly. Yes, I've been keeping an eye out in secret and I want to take another step up. Chu Tianlang said sadly, I have a plan. Once I reach the position of hall leader, the Supreme Lord will be able to pass down the art of agelessness. Yunyang was shocked. The art of agelessness? That's what the rumors say. Chu Tianlang looked miserable. But after so many years of effort, I've only managed to touch a little bit and it's all a blur. Is there anything else? Since you've met the so-called Jinbei general before, with your observation skills, you should be able to see more. Yunyang's gaze was cold as he stared at Chu Tianlang. He was very tall, about 8 feet tall. His physique was muscular, probably 200 caddies, and he had the aura of someone in charge of life and death. Chu Tianlang tried his best to recall. His position must not have been low. Oh, right. His eyes shone suddenly. What? Yunyang's gaze brightened as well. This person is a lecher. Last time, he came to my manor because he had some matters to attend to. I arranged a concubine to sleep with him. According to that concubine, he had a scar on his buttocks. It was like a crescent moon, on his left buttocks. Yunyang perked up. A lecher with a scar on his buttocks. This clue was the most important one. At the very least, there was something clear. Although this part of the body was indecent, it had a personality and a mark, making it easy to find. Yunyang glanced sideways at Chu Tianlang. This fellow, arranging a concubine to sleep with him, no wonder his face was so green. What else? This time, Chu Tianlang pondered for a long time and finally said dejectedly, there's really nothing else. Yunyang frowned and asked, then, why does the Four Seasons Tower want to go against the 9 Supremes? Chu Tianlang's eyes were once again filled with intense struggle. It was as if this question had touched his bottom line. Yunyang was not in a hurry as he said slowly, the Four Seasons Tower is such a colossus, but it has no conflict with the worldly imperial authority and has never wanted to dominate the world. It has always been an underground force that transcends the world. In the past, when countries rose and fell, the Four Seasons Tower had never made a move. But this time, why did it want to kill Yutong's 9 Supremes? Chu Tianlang kept quiet and did not answer. Yin Yang smiled lightly and stood up, saying, "Since you're not willing to answer, I won't force you. Rest first, I'll heal your wounds. 3 days later, when you're more or less recovered, I'll come and ask you again." Chu Tianlang shuddered. "I'll talk." Continuous torture was different from giving people time to recover and then torturing them over and over again. Chu Tianlang could not help but convulse at the thought of such a feeling. Yin Yang stood still and said with a faint smile, "I won't force you. I'm willing to talk." Chu Tianlang said hoarsely, "I only ask that you give me a quick death after I'm done." Yin Yang said faintly, "That's impossible. I need to verify everything you've said. Once I've done so, I'll give you a quick death when it's time. What I know is very vague as well. A lot of it is just my own guess." Chu Tianlang's voice was weak. Regarding the 9 Supremes, the first reason seems to be, if the 9 Supremes' powers are accomplished, they'll have the power to dominate the world. This is something our Supreme Lord is very concerned about. This is what I've deduced. Yin Yang's gaze was lowered as he said faintly, "Continue." Also, there are many people who want the 9 Supremes to disappear, including the Empire of Yutong, the military, the government, the royals and nobles, not to mention other countries. Also, there were many mysterious characters and clans involved as well. That's all I know. Chu Tianlang thought hard. Right, I remember there were a few rumors in the martial arts world at the time, but they disappeared very quickly. Yin Yang frowned and said faintly, "When the 9 Supremes return, the earth and heaven will be turned upside down. The martial world and the world will be dominated?" Chu Tianlang lifted his head abruptly. "That's right, these are the words." Yin Yang sucked in a long breath. Chu Tianlang said, "I remember that it was because of the words 'the only one who can do it alone' that caused panic. Because these words were spoken by Heaven's Inquisition. This is a prediction of the future." Yin Yang sighed slowly and murmured, "I see, the entire world wants the 9 Supremes dead." A cold glint flashed across his eyes. Heaven's Inquisition. What was Heaven's Inquisition trying to do with these words? These words, along with the legend of the 9 Heavens domain, would definitely make the 9 Supremes the target of everyone. Moreover, he was the target of the entire Jianghu. One last question. Yin Yang said, "Who is your hall leader? Who is the Supreme Lord?" Chu Tianlang chuckled bitterly. "I believe that no matter who you ask, they won't know." Yin Yang nodded, not surprised. "That's right." Yin Yang exited the secret chamber and came to the yard. He sat quietly under the pergola, feeling the pressure mounting. As the mysteries of the past were revealed bit by bit, Yin Yang realized that the enemies he had to face were actually increasing. The cold moon and chilly wind blew against his face. Yin Yang suddenly felt the urge to drink. There were many people who wanted the 9 Supremes to disappear, including the Empire of Yutong, the military, the government, the royals and nobles. Needless to say, there were many mysterious characters and gangs in the martial world from other countries as well. The Empire of Yutong, the military, the government, the royals, the martial world, the mysterious gangs. Yin Yang mumbled to himself, his handsome face suddenly contorted into a menacing expression. Chapter 62. Yin Yang's heart sank. These pieces of news had truly pressured him. The Crown Prince's advisor, the government officials, the military generals, the palace's eunuchs, and the northern garrison general on the 20th of the first month. Yin Yang dared to guarantee that these were all fake titles. Yin Yang had originally planned to summon the 9 Heavens dictum once he found a clue and continue the investigation. However, he dared not do so now. It was not that he did not dare to deal with these people, but he dared not let the 9 Heavens dictum act. The implications were too great. If those brats were to find out that their most respected boss was killed by the people they had been protecting all this time, who knew what kind of trouble they would cause? The Empire of Yutong would be turned upside down, that was for sure. Thinking of His Majesty spitting blood and fainting time and time again, of the old marshal racking his brains for this, of the hundreds of millions of people in the Empire of Yutong who would be plunged into misery if chaos broke out, Yun Yang gritted his teeth, swallowing the grief and indignation in his heart. I will do it all alone. Watch as I single-handedly dominate this world. Yun Yang recalled Heaven's Inquisition's words and enunciated each word through gritted teeth. Dominate, dominate. Yun Yang stood under the pergola, in the center of Tiantang City, surrounded by thousands of lights. However, he suddenly felt a sense of loneliness that came from the depths of his heart. It was a strong sense of loneliness. The sky was dotted with stars. Yun Yang had a feeling that he was the only one under the starry sky. He was the center of heaven and earth. Amidst the sea of people, he was alone. Yun Yang sighed softly. Lao Mei stood quietly behind him, looking at Yun Yang. He could obviously feel Yun Yang's loneliness. It was a kind of loneliness in his heart, and he could not help but feel his heart ache for him. He could faintly feel that his young master was carrying a pressure that was as heavy as a mountain. Young master, Lao Mei said softly. What? Yun Yang did not turn around. Lao Mei kept quiet for a moment and said in a low voice, I am very curious about young master's identity now. Yun Yang smiled faintly. Curious? Yes. Young master has arranged for me to send out tens of millions of gold coins in this year. Lao Mei said, now, it is even more important to capture Li Changqiu and Chu Tianlang. Although young master has been hiding behind the scenes, these two people are not insignificant. Young master took them down effortlessly with a snap of your fingers. But during the interrogation, no one is allowed to be present. Lao Mei said seriously, I know that young master is doing something big and does not want anyone to know about it. But I, Lao Mei, am not an outsider after all. I also wish to lend a helping hand to young master. Yun Yang smiled warmly. I know. He looked at Lao Mei. Lao Mei, no matter what, you're one of the people I trust the most. The reason why I'm not letting you know now is because I'm not confident myself, and the time is not right yet. But one day, you will find out. I will let you know. Yun Yang said softly, Lao Mei, wait patiently. If I didn't trust you, I wouldn't have let you participate in so many things. Lao Mei understands, Lao Mei replied. Don't tell Marquis Yun about this, Yun Yang said softly. Lao Mei could only feel a wild shock in his heart. Marquis Yun. Yun Yang addressed Yun Xiaoyao as Marquis Yun. What did this mean? 1,000 miles away from Tiantang City. A tall figure dressed in black was flying towards the direction of Tiantang City. The tip of his foot touched the ground and he flew 100 feet like he was flying. Each step covered 100 feet. There was not a single mistake. In this uninhabited place, he rode the wind and traveled. His black robes fluttered in the wind, his handsome face was calm, his eyes dark and deep. He was dressed in a long black robe with a black belt around his waist. A long sword in a black scabbard hung by his side. Just as he walked into a forest, there was a sudden rustling in front of him. A dozen men dressed in black appeared from all directions. The leader hollered, Is that Marquis Yun in front? The man lifted his gaze slightly and did not answer, but everyone could feel that his gaze had answered their own question. It was him. 7 Steps Killer Sword, Yun Xiaoyao. As a swordsman of the martial world, you're already in the imperial court now. You've enjoyed enough glory and wealth. Come with us. The masked man in black cackled menacingly. With a wave of his hand, he commanded, Take him down. Marquis Yun, who was standing opposite, watched the dozen men in black charge towards him with a calm gaze. Suddenly, he floated up. His black robes fluttered as he charged forward. His right hand brushed across his waist elegantly and a flash of sword light appeared in his hand. Swoosh, 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 more than a dozen bolts of lightning flashed in the dark sky. Sky blue lightning. Just as the dozen men in black came into contact with Marquis Yun, blood spurted from each of their throats at the same time. Disbelief flickered in their eyes. Marquis Yun's limpid sword tip had already pierced into the chest of the leader of the men in black with an elegant sky blue glow. The blade was cool like water as it shimmered with a blue glow. Both of them stared at each other with a long sword between them. The man in black's gaze was filled with disbelief and despair while Marquis Yun's was still as calm as ice. You're not sixth peak, you're ninth peak. The man in black spoke with difficulty. Looking at the long sword in front of his chest, he could only feel his strength draining away along with his vitality. He felt that it was ridiculous. A peerless expert of the ninth heaven. Who was the one who spread the news that he was only at the sixth peak? How could they have come to ambush a ninth heaven expert so foolishly? This was a setup. I've never been a sixth peak. Marquis Yun said faintly, who asked you to come? Ha. The man in black made a strange sound as he mumbled, do you think you can get an answer out of me? Marquis Yun nodded indifferently. With a push, the long sword pierced through his chest. Clang! The long sword returned to its scabbard. Marquis Yun's silhouette was already 100 feet away. With another flash, he had already disappeared. I didn't even plan to ask. What will come will come. I have my sword. It's enough. The tall silhouette disappeared into the forest, flying towards Enchanting City. In the night, it turned into a stream of light. In the dense forest behind him, the masked man in black looked at the bloody hole in his chest in disbelief. He did not expect the other party to kill him so easily. Did he not want to ask him something? Why did he stop? Just like that, with bewilderment, the black-clothed man's body slowly fell to the ground. The corpses of the 12 men in black were lying on the ground in 12 different directions. Their heads were almost facing each other while their legs were facing outwards. It was like a well-proportioned flower had bloomed on the ground. With a casual swing of the sword, a flower of blood bloomed. With a single strike, 12 deaths, a formation of life. In a corner of Enchanting City, there was a small tavern. The tavern did not have a name. It was obvious that the business was bad as the place was deserted. A white-haired old man sat on a small stool in front of the door, his eyes murky. Yin Yang appeared in the night and came to the old man's side, saying faintly, "Old Dugu, a guest is here." The old man's eyes were blurry as he hummed, "What would you like to eat, sir?" A warm smile hung on Yin Yang's face as he said, "Would like to eat the Chinese cabbage and tofu you made. Also, I would like to drink some concentric wine." The old man lifted his head to look at Yin Yang and said, "Sir, you look unfamiliar." Yin Yang said, "Someone who has eaten your Chinese cabbage and tofu is someone familiar, no matter how unfamiliar he is." The old man's eyes shone as he said, yes, that makes sense. Please come with me." Yin Yang walked in. The old man was right behind him as he installed the door plank. A sign was hung. Closed. He was not serving any other customers. It's been a long time since anyone has come to drink in this small tavern of mine. Old Dugu said in a low voice as he hunched over and busied himself, "If you didn't come today and no one came in a few days, would have closed and left." Yin Yang's expression was distant as he looked at the dirty tavern, his eyes filled with emotion. He still remembered that each time they returned from a mission, the brothers would use different methods and paths to find this place and meet up here. The brothers each had a small table, drinking alone. However, when their gazes met occasionally, they were filled with joy and joy. "We're together again." Now, the tavern was still filled with small tables. Each table was only 2 feet wide and could only hold a dish, a pot of wine, and a goblet. There was no other space. 18 tables were arranged neatly along the corners of the walls. Subconsciously, Yin Yang walked to the 9th table and sat down. His gaze involuntarily swept across the other tables. Old Dugu looked at Yin Yang's expression and suddenly lowered his head. 2 drops of murky tears fell to the ground. He then carefully scrubbed the wok and all the utensils. He was meticulous in his work. A translucent Chinese cabbage appeared on the chopping board. He felt around with his fingers, and a hidden cabinet appeared on the wall in front of him. He took out a kitchen knife that gleamed with a cold light. He muttered to himself, "Do you want to learn this skill of mine? Do you want to learn how to make Chinese cabbage and tofu from me? This Chinese cabbage needs to be shredded. This tofu needs water." Yun Yang listened attentively and finally said softly, "Old Dugu, are you leaving too?" Old Dugu's murky gaze stayed in a daze as he murmured, "They're all gone, the old customers are all gone, they're not coming anymore, what's the point of me staying here?" Yin Yang felt a pang in his heart as he said, "I'll come often." "You won't come often, you can't come often." Old Dugu murmured, "This is the last meal I'll make for you." Tears glistened in his murky eyes. Yin Yang was silent. "You won't come often, you have too many things to do. You can't come often, it'll affect your state of mind." Yin Yang understood. He was silent and so was old Dugu, busy with his work. The sound of the kitchen knife, the sound of hot oil, and the indescribable aroma filled the small room. An inexplicable sense of loneliness and warmth suddenly assaulted Yun Yang's heart. A plate of Chinese cabbage and tofu was placed in front of him. The Chinese cabbage was like jade, crystal clear, the tofu was like white jade, white and flawless, the soup was like clear water and blue sky. A pot of wine was placed in front of Yun Yang. The aroma of the wine assaulted his nostrils. Old Dugu put a pot of wine and a dish on the other 8 tables. Yun Yang finally could not help but say hoarsely. Old Dugu was stunned and murmured, "Put them on? Put them on." Yun Yang lowered his head, his voice hoarse with a slight tremble. Chapter 63. Each of the 8 small tables was filled with dishes and wine. The goblets were filled to the brim. Yun Yang sat alone with his head lowered. He ate a mouthful of food and drank a mouthful of wine. Not a word was spoken. Old Dugu sat in the corner, looking at the 8 empty seats and the dishes on the 8 small tables. After a while, he slowly closed his eyes. 2 streams of murky tears fell silently. "I found a place." Supreme Blood's voice was excited. "We can go drink there." "Where is it? Is it reliable?" "Of course it is. Besides, the old man there only knows how to cook one dish, cabbage and tofu. The taste is superb." "Only cabbage and tofu?" "Only cabbage and tofu." "Then we have to try it. It's not bad indeed." "Boss, let's all go next time." All right. That old man is eccentric. His business isn't good so not many people go there. We can give him more money when we go." "All right. I had a great time drinking yesterday." "Me too. I felt relaxed going to that little shop. It's been a long time since I felt like this." "Oh, Joe seems to have fainted from drinking last night." "Everyone, be considerate. Oh, Joe is still young, still a child. He hasn't grown any hair yet, why would he drink?" "Ha ha ha ha, you're the child. Your whole family are children. You're the one who hasn't grown any hair. You've grown. Show me." Ha ha ha. Yin Yang drank goblet after goblet, memory after memory surged into his mind. Everything was so clear in his memory, it was as if the 8 brothers were sitting at their seats, drinking while watching the other brothers quietly. Everyone's heart was still filled with happiness and contentment. The aroma of the wine permeated the air like the souls of the 9 brothers had fused together. Yin Yang drank a mouthful of wine and a wave of sadness washed over him, causing him to choke and cough. Cough, cough, cough. He covered his mouth and lowered his head, coughing non-stop as tears rolled down his cheeks. It was only after a long while that his coughing stopped. In his heart, he had already reported his findings during this period of time to his brothers. I'm doing it. Do you see it? Old Dugu, where are you going? Yin Yang's voice was muffled. I don't know either, old Dugu said blankly. Come to my house. Yin Yang said, I'm short on manpower. I'm not going. Old Dugu looked at Yin Yang's back as he leaned against the table lovingly, like an old man looking at his fragile and overburdened son. He said hoarsely, I have things to do as well. Yin Yang said in a daze, yes, we all have things to do, after a long while. Yin Yang stood up, looking longingly at the small tables and the 8 untouched dishes. Suppressing the throbbing pain in his heart, he closed his eyes and said hoarsely, I'm leaving. Watching Yin Yang's silhouette disappear around the corner, old Dugu's gaze lingered for a long time. The midnight breeze caressed his old face, the wrinkles on his face like the lines drawn by the passage of time. Child, you're too tired. Old Dugu murmured soundlessly, blood is my only family. I've picked up this baby in his swaddling clothes from the snow and watched him grow up day by day, watched him build his career day by day. Finally. I've waited for such news, luckily, there's still someone here. How nice. Old Dugu's gaze slowly changed. Since there's still someone here, I'm relieved. I'm going to do what I should do as well. How can I not seek revenge for this blood debt? His gaze sharpened abruptly. Like 2 bolts of lightning, they tore through the night sky. His hunched form straightened abruptly in front of the shop. Boom! A soundless aura gushed out. Behind him, the entire shop, including the tables and chairs, the kitchenware, and even the entire house, turned into powder without a sound. Then, with a shake of his body, he vanished as if he had melted into the air. Yin Yang's entire demeanor was somber as he walked on the road. Could he not go to this shop anymore from now on? A silhouette suddenly appeared before him. It was as if the silhouette was shrouded in mist, blurring his vision. Only a blurry silhouette could be seen. Child, I have a gift for you. The blurry silhouette spoke and waved his hand. Yin Yang felt like there was something in his embrace. He called out subconsciously, Old Dugu. His sensitive senses picked up a whiff of smoke and smoke. Could this old Dugu actually be an unparalleled expert? The blurry silhouette did not answer. With a swoosh, it disappeared into thin air without a trace. Yin Yang looked around, only to see the galaxy and the bright moon in the sky. Where was the blurry silhouette? Reaching into his robe, he took out the item and was stunned. It was a metal token. It exuded a dark red hue. A word was carved in the middle, N. The 9 heavens mystical steel, the medallion of gratitude. Yin Yang was taken aback at once. This gift was too valuable. The medallion of gratitude. There was an unparalleled swordsman in the martial world who forged 3 secret weapons using the steel of the 9th heaven and the essence of the deep sea. He called them the Soul Pursuit Medallion. However, his swordsmanship had been perfected and he was invincible. The Soul Pursuit Medallion was no longer of use. 1 man and 1 sword were enough to dominate the world. What was the use of secret weapons? Therefore, he had used the 3 secret weapons to make 3 medallions of gratitude. There were 3 people who had been of great help to him, people who had saved his life. They were sent out separately. His words were clear, as long as the medallion of gratitude arrives, I will do something for the emperor without any compensation. No matter what it is, no matter what it is. Anything, these 4 words were too heavy. No one knew who he had given it to. However, the return of 2 of the 3 medallions of gratitude had stirred up a storm in the world. One of the medallions of gratitude had returned. His Highness the Empire of Zio's Crown Prince, his guards, aides, advisors, concubines, maids, eunuchs, a total of 1,788 people had died under this swordsman's sword. Another medallion of gratitude had returned. Back then, the martial world's top sect, the House of Saber Beheading, had been massacred, starting from its leader. The House of Saber Beheading had been uprooted. More than 3,000 people had died a violent death. Until now, the remaining members of the House of Saber Beheading in the martial world dared not call themselves members of the House of Saber Beheading. After this swordsman had killed the Crown Prince of Zio, the Empire of Zio had sent countless experts to hunt him down. However, he had remained unscathed. Instead, it was those who had pursued him who had died under his sword without exception. It was from then on that this swordsman was honored as the unrivaled swordsman in the world. Jun Moyen. That was his name. Jun Moyen, clad in green and with a sword in hand, looked down on the world of mortals and clouds. The medallion of gratitude had chilled heaven and earth. 2 of the 3 medallions of gratitude had been returned. In other words, the medallion of gratitude in Yun Yang's hands now was the only one in this world. With this medallion, he could command the unrivaled swordsman, Jun Moyen, once. No matter what. Yun Yang sucked in a cold breath. He turned and ran back. Who was this old Dugu? How could he have such an earth-shattering item in his hands? However, the gift was too valuable, so much so that Yun Yang dared not accept it. When he returned to the tavern, all he saw was a floor of powder. At this moment, the original location of the pub was no longer in ruins. Only a thick layer of fine powder that looked like sand was left on the ground. On the wall next to it, a piece of paper was nailed with a gleaming cleaver. It was a blank piece of paper. Yin Yang's heart skipped a beat. Reaching out to grab the spiritual qi in the air, he soaked the entire piece of paper. A line of words slowly appeared on it. Don't look for me. Someone has to pay the price for my child's death. You're in Yutong, I'm going to Dongxian, Zio, Tianxi, Dayuan. The murderous intent within the words was overwhelming. Yin Yang shuddered. My child is dead. My child. Who was it? He recalled that Supreme Blood had always clamored to come here, and each time he had mentioned this place, he had always been happy. This place had been discovered by Supreme Blood himself. This was Supreme Blood's father. My brother's father. This old father had been here, in this rundown tavern, silently watching over his children until now. He had unparalleled skills, but he had been living in poverty. It was because he knew that as long as he was here, his son would be able to find him. His children would have a home. Each time he cooked for his children, his heart was filled with happiness. He did not need the martial world storm, nor did he need an unparalleled reputation. He only wanted to see his children safe and sound. Even when the world was saying that the 9 Supremes were dead, he had still been waiting here, waiting for a faint hope. He had held on for a year. Finally, Yin Yang had come. The old man was completely relieved. However, he had also given up completely. Yin Yang said that there were dishes and wine on all 8 seats. At that moment, he knew that his children were really gone. He did not know who the remaining one was, which one of the 9 Supremes it was, but he would never ask. A secret is a secret. The children's secret is my secret. Therefore, when he was sure that he had seen the true face of one of them, he had left immediately. He wanted to seek revenge. This journey would be filled with a storm of blood and fire. In spite of this, he would never return. His heart was dead. However, before he left, he had left the medallion of gratitude behind. If I had the medallion of gratitude, I could only kill a few people at most. However, if I had left it with this child, it could unleash unimaginable power. Besides, it was also a talisman that I had left for my child. My medallion of gratitude has been given to this child. I will tell Jun Moyen, of course. With the medallion of gratitude of the unrivaled swordsman, who dares lay a finger on my child? Uncle. Yin Yang's heart trembled violently. He suddenly roared into the sky, why didn't you say so earlier? He fell to his knees, tears streaming down his cheeks. If he had known that this was his brother's father, I've longed for family too. Even if it's my brother's father, it's still my father. Why didn't you say so? Why didn't you stay and let me be filial to you? Even if it's for revenge, can't it be with me? Tiantang City's South Gate. A grayish silhouette soared through the night fog and flew out of the city gate as if he was riding on a cloud. He sucked in a long breath and looked back. Enchanting city stood majestically in the night, unshakable. "Child, take care of yourself." He let out a soft sigh, bent his body, and walked into the distance in a melancholy manner. On the opposite side, a tall silhouette in black rushed over from afar. Both of them were facing each other. A sense of extreme danger rose in Marquis Yun's heart, as if he had suddenly encountered an enemy that he could not match. Furthermore, this person was filled with a violent, destructive, and explosive aura. It was like a volcano that was about to erupt. Marquis Yun could not help but shudder as he looked at the hunched elder in front of him. Old Dugu's murky eyes met Marquis Yun's face. He actually smiled and said softly, "Take care." His body rose from the ground to a high altitude. With a clap of thunder, he vanished without a trace. Marquis Yun was drenched in cold sweat. At this moment, he finally knew who this person was. Thunder shook the sky, accompanied by thunderbolts. The name of Dugu was lonely in the secular world. Dugu Ji, this legendary expert, why would he suddenly come out from Enchanting City? When did he come to Enchanting City? And he actually told me, "Take care." Chapter 64. Yun Yang returned to the residence of Yun, feeling melancholy. The medallion of gratitude was stuck to his chest, but it made his heart feel like it was burning. "I hope that we can meet again in the future." Yun Yang's gaze was resolute. "I'll definitely let you enjoy your life in peace. Old sir, you must take care." He stepped into the house and before he could adjust his emotions, he saw Lao Mei looking at him strangely. There was another person standing in the yard with his back facing him. Yun Yang's gaze flashed, knowing immediately. "Lao Mei, you may leave," Marquis Yun said softly. "Yes." Although Lao Mei was curious about the relationship between this father and son, and wanted to stay for a look, Marquis Yun had asked him to leave, so he had no choice but to do so. "You're back. How did it go?" Yun Yang smiled relaxedly. "Not bad, it went smoothly." Marquis Yun smiled casually as well and turned to look at Yun Yang with an odd gaze. "I've killed the leaders of the 8 barbarian tribes in the southern wasteland. Now, at least in the southwest, there's no leader." Yun Yang sighed, his gaze turning odd as well. "I was just asking. This is your own matter, why are you telling me? I didn't ask you to do these things. How have you been recently?" Marquis Yun asked. "I'm alright, still the same." Yun Yang said casually, "Anyway, I'm living a carefree life." Marquis Yun smiled. "As long as you don't cause trouble." Yun Yang laughed and said, "Are you going out again now that you're back?" Marquis Yun frowned and said, "I'm going to the grassland in a few days." "The grassland?" Yun Yang hummed and said, "The grassland is not like the southern wasteland. There are countless experts there. You have to be careful." Of course. This was a strange pair of father and son. The father did not act like a father, and the son did not act like a son. Instead, they were like a pair of friends who treated each other with respect and treated each other like guests. They met by chance and exchanged a few words indifferently. After exchanging a few words, the two of them actually felt that there was nothing left to say. "I'm going to sleep," Yun Yang said. "Go." "Oh, right. There's something I'd like to ask you." Marquis Yun called out to Yun Yang, "Actually, I've always been curious about your identity. Ever since you saved my life outside the Great Wall 3 years ago, I knew that you were definitely not an ordinary person. But, who are you?" There was extreme confusion in Marquis Yun's gaze. "Back then, you asked me to arrange this identity for you and said that you would tell me the reason after 3 years. It has been 3 years now." Yun Yang was stunned for a moment before he chuckled bitterly and said, "Marquis Yun is a wealthy man of leisure. Besides, almost no one knows that Marquis Yun's true identity is that of the late emperor's son. He is His Majesty's biological brother. Marquis Yun snorted. Go to the grassland in a few days? 10 days later. That's good. We can avoid the capital's whirlpool. But before we go, we still have to meet His Majesty. Marquis Yun said with a frown, the princes are causing so much trouble. The Empire of Yutong is already in a precarious situation. How can anything good happen if this goes on? We have to restrain ourselves. Yin Yang smiled faintly but did not speak. He thought to himself, His Majesty is worried sick about this now. Aren't you adding fuel to the fire by saying this? It looked like Marquis Yun did not have much of a political brain. After a few words, Marquis Yun took out a parcel from his robe and said, I met a ferocious beast by accident when I was in the southern border. After I defeated it, I found out that this fellow was guarding a stalk of blood-colored Lingji mushroom. I consumed half of it and my cultivation base surged from the 8th level pinnacle to the 9th heaven. This is the other half. Marquis Yun said, I know there's something wrong with your body. When you saved me 3 years ago, you were already at the 3rd heaven pinnacle of mystical chi. Now, you're actually not even at the 3rd heaven. Perhaps this can help you. Yin Yang was silent for a moment. Feeling Emmy's restlessness, he wanted to reject it but nodded and said, Thank you. You're welcome. Marquis Yun patted his shoulder gently. I'll enter the palace early tomorrow morning and visit a few friends' houses in the afternoon. I won't be home for these few days. Yin Yang said, Then meet me before you leave. All right. If the conversation between this father and son pair had been overheard by others, their eyes would have popped out of their sockets. Just as Yin Yang was about to leave, he suddenly thought of something. Does His Majesty know about me? He recalled their meeting in the residence of Old Marshal that night. If His Majesty knew the truth, he would not have treated him with such an attitude. As expected, Marquis Yun answered, He doesn't know. Since I've promised you, this secret can only be known by the two of us in this world. That's good. Yin Yang returned to his room and went to rest. Marquis Yun stood outside in the night, his gaze fixed on a flowering tree beside him. A thoughtful look flashed across his eyes. Spy. He smiled faintly, his thoughts racing. According to Lao Mei's observation, Yin Yang was related to the 9 heavens dictum. This was without a doubt. However, his status should be a little higher than that. What his identity was, he couldn't be sure. Besides, this fellow's cautiousness had reached the peak of perfection. Lao Mei was the only person by his side who could be used in the open. However, he was still able to keep Lao Mei in the dark even after everything had been done. This kind of wisdom was both admirable and terrifying. He pondered for a moment. Then, he went to Lao Mei's room. Lao Mei, follow young Master Yun Yang wholeheartedly from now on. Marquis Yun said faintly with his arms behind his back, There's no need to report to me if there's anything else. Lao Mei replied, Yes, young master. Marquis Yun sighed. Back then, the 3 of you roamed the martial world with me. Now, you're the only one left. Following Yin Yang will give you a more stable life, unlike following me, wandering from place to place. Lao Mei's eyes were moist. Young master, Mei Wenjian won't regret it even if he dies. I know, but I'm afraid I'll never be able to settle down in this lifetime. Marquis Yun sighed slowly. Yin Yang is a man who does great things. Follow him. I trust you, and I trust him. Lao Mei blinked and asked in a daze, Young master, is young master Yin Yang really not your son? Marquis Yun chuckled bitterly. I really want to make this a reality and acknowledge him as my son, but it's obviously impossible. Lao Mei sighed. When Yin Yang returned to his room, his emotions were as calm as still water. When the 4 children saw him, one of them crawled out from under the blanket, another from somewhere on top of the bed, another from the beam, and the last one crawled out from a book on Yin Yang's table. Meow, 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 Yun Yang almost laughed out loud. These little critters were really good at hiding. How could a cat be hidden in a book on the table? Yun Yang went over to open it and saw that the middle portion of the foot-thick, the biography of Tianxian continent's emperors, generals, and ministers, had been eaten away. Closing the book, it was still a good book. However, when he opened it, there was a large hole. Moreover, the shape was similar to the shape of a cat lying on its stomach, fitting seamlessly into the book. F***CK. Yun Yang was dumbfounded. They were really good at hiding. Pulling open the claws of the 3 eclipse panthers, he could see that their claws were as sharp as knives and spears, gleaming with a cold glint. He ordered, "Grab one from this chair and let me have a look." Swoosh! Swoosh! One of the little critters the size of a fist thought that its owner was playing a game with it. It waved its paw excitedly and a hole the size of a cat's paw appeared precisely on the sturdy rosewood chair. Hey! Chapter 65. This eclipse panther was only a third-grade mystical beast. Among the eclipse panthers, it could only be considered a newborn cub. It should not have any combat power. Although it was in the 3rd level, its combat power was definitely not. However, the claw just now had stunned Yun Yang for a moment. Even a fully grown 3rd level mystical beast would not be able to do such a thing. What was going on? "Emmy, what's going on?" Yun Yang asked, confused. In his subconscious, Emmy swayed happily, its 2 tentacles dancing in the air as it explained to Yun Yang with its tentacles. Emmy was easily satisfied. As long as Yun Yang could enter his deific consciousness to talk to it and accompany it for a while, it would dance excitedly. It had no other requests. Of course, it would be even better if there was an endless supply of vitality that came in every day. Yun Yang finally understood. The air of vitality that Emmy exuded was a great blessing to mystical beasts, even if it was just a sliver. It could change a mystical beast's aptitude and speed up its advancement. It could even allow a mystical beast to be reborn and reach new heights. As for these little fellows, they were by Yun Yang's side every day, bathing in the air of vitality. How could they not grow quickly? Although there would not be an obvious change in their size, their entire body, including their intelligence, would be completely different from their peers. Does this mean that the eclipse panther is basically equivalent to a human 3rd heaven expert? Yun Yang's eyes were filled with stars. If that was the case, it would be great. Emmy obviously did not know what the human 3rd heaven expert that Yun Yang was talking about was. Its confused tendrils swayed for a while before it retracted and began to coil itself around Yun Yang, like a child pestering an adult for delicious food. Yun Yang sighed. He knew that the blood-colored Lingji mushroom that Marquis Yun had given him just now was lost. He handed it over helplessly. "I don't even know what kind of medicinal herb this is." Just as he was mumbling to himself, he saw the blood-colored Lingji mushroom in his hand turn into powder with a swoosh. The corners of Yun Yang's lips twitched. It ate it too quickly. In his subconscious, Emmy swayed happily, its tendrils curling up a huge ball of pink spiritual energy and stuffed it directly into the soil at its roots. Then, it seemed even happier. His body was visibly thicker than before. The thin vines rolled up balls of green life aura at their roots and played around in the air. With a flick from time to time, the air of vitality would flow to Yun Yang, causing him to shake his head and wriggle in joy. The little guy was full. Yun Yang sat on the bed in a good mood and began to cultivate. The 4 little fellows began to surround him again, leaning against Yun Yang quietly. When Yun Yang woke up from his meditative state, there was still warmth in his embrace. It was the return of the other eclipse panther, but it had already left without a sound. For the next few days, everything was peaceful. Yun Yang still did not know that too many things had happened in the area protected by the tiny eclipse panther. At least 70 or 80 local ruffians were found dead on the street. Every one of them had their throats scratched by the claws of some kind of mystical beast. So many people had suddenly been attacked and killed by Xian beasts, and it had happened consecutively in the past few days. Naturally, it would raise the alarm. The officials investigated everyone in the area, and everyone was dumbfounded. He didn't know. He really didn't know. Mystical beast? Are you kidding me? We're all poor here, who could afford to keep a mystical beast? What's more, such a powerful mystical beast, what? You're asking me what I think? There's nothing to say. It's good that they died. These ruffians were heartless, they died a good death, they died a wonderful death. During the investigation, the officials discovered that all of the hooligans who had died seemed to have one thing in common before they died, and that was, they had bullied innocent people. Or, they had molested women. Could it be that this mystical beast knew to enforce justice on behalf of heaven? But wasn't it a little too ruthless? A few of the ruffians had only spoken harshly and pushed a few handicapped people, but they were not injured. However, they were still killed by the mystical beast's claws. In the past few days, the officers had been living in this area. Moreover, in order to solve the case, they had specially found a few hooligans in this area who were scared out of their wits. They were told to bully people and attract the murderer, the Shen beast. However, when the night came and the bait had died, there was still no clue. The officials were in a terrible predicament. The matter was too serious. Of course, when the officials were handling the case, there would naturally be people watching. Sometimes, when they were examining the corpses, there would be a circle of people. Sometimes, there was also a pretty little girl with a cute and lazy kitten in her arms. She also timidly went over to watch the show, but when the crowd saw it, they all scolded, "Hurry up and go home, little girl, what are you doing?" As for the kitten in the little girl's arms, there was naturally no doubt. Such a weak kitten that was obviously not even a month old, what was there to be suspicious of? The eyes of the kitten looked at the two-legged humans in front of it, and after a glance, it closed its eyes. This was naturally done by the little thing. "Master asked me to guard, then I will guard well. Master said I can't let the people here be bullied, then whoever dares to bully people, I will give him a claw. As for whether the person should die or not, the severity of the crime, and so on, naturally it was not the little thing's consideration. It definitely could not think of such complicated things. It was simply carrying out its master's orders. If you dare to bully people, I will claw you to death. Obviously, there would not be a single clue in such a case, no matter how the investigation was carried out. An eclipse panther that had already reached the 4th level, one that was constantly mutating, killing a few ruffians would be a piece of cake, effortless. In addition, there would not be a single trace left behind. In these few days, Yun Yang would interrogate Chu Tianlang whenever he had the time. Again and again, he would ask the same questions from different angles. After he was done, he would go to Li Changqiu for comparison. Chu Tianlang was almost driven mad from the torture. Each time, he would beg, "Give me a quick death. I really can't take it anymore." During this period of time, Yun Yang had also collected too much information on the officials and soldiers, including those in His Highness' residence. He had created a file on each and every one of them. These things flowed endlessly into his hands. Then, he filtered them carefully, going through them one by one. Other than the information from the palace that had yet to be sent over, the rest of the information had already filled up a secret room. After continuously interrogating Chu Tianlang for 7 to 8 times, Yun Yang was finally cautious enough to confirm that what Chu Tianlang had said was all true. An advisor in the residence of Crown Prince. If my analysis is correct, it must be one of these 3 people. As for the mysterious general, it's a little hard to confirm, but the general of the northern garrison must be one of these generals. The one in the palace is temporarily out of reach. That official has no clue as well. What's more, it's important to note that there must be more than just these few people involved. There must be other people that Chu Tianlang doesn't know about lying in ambush. If we act rashly and alert the enemy, things will get out of hand. Yin Yang felt like his head had grown 3 times bigger as he combed through the information. However, he did not plan to wait any longer, nor did he want to continue analyzing. He was going to act. However, there was still something that Yun Yang did not understand. Why hadn't Dong Tianlong come over these few days? Had he won? With this fellow's personality, if he had won, wouldn't he be bragging to the world? It was not normal for him to be so calm. Also, why had the young masters of the four noble families such as Shiman not made any moves after dealing with Chu Tianlang? Yin Yang had thought that those fellows would at least come to test him out, but no one had done so. This made Yin Yang feel that something was not right. The third thing that he did not understand was that Ji Ling's best friends had come to visit him once, but they had not been there. This did not seem to match the temperament of these unruly girls. However, these thoughts were just a flash in Yin Yang's mind. Holding his brush, he looked at the hundreds of names that he had listed and finally said softly, "Let's start with this so-called general of the northern garrison." This was also the one that he had the most confidence in. The Four Seasons Tower is powerful indeed. However, as long as one wants to go against him, there will come a day when all of them will be caught. Yin Yang thought to himself, capturing Li Changqiu will bring Chu Tianlang out, and Chu Tianlang will bring a few others out. If this goes on, one day. I have patience. Yin Yang's gaze was cold. In these few days, Fang Mafei's body had mostly recovered and his cultivation base had mostly recovered as well. This made Yin Yang feel a little more confident. "Old Fang, follow me to do something," Yin Yang arranged. Fang Mafei walked out excitedly. Both of them left the residence of Yun early in the morning. Yin Yang's purple robe was still fluttering as he walked towards the Cirrus house in the city. The Cirrus house's business was booming as usual. The music was melodious and pleasing to the ears. Knowing that Yun Yang had arrived, Yun Ziyu left the guests behind and brought Yun Yang to the highest floor. This was a treatment that no one else could enjoy. The other guests curled their lips. Isn't this Marquis Yun's young master? A pretty boy is indeed popular, being treated with the highest standard the moment he arrived. I have to say, this child is really handsome. No wonder Lady Zuyu is attracted to him. Sigh, who asked my parents to not give me a good look? Young brother, is there any news? Yun Zuyu looked more haggard than the last time they met. No. Yin Yang felt another pang in his heart. Looking at Yun Zuyu's pain, Yin Yang had wanted to tell her the truth so that she would not have to wait so hopelessly. However, after thinking about it for a long time, he dismissed the idea. Perhaps she could continue living in this hope. If he were to tell her the truth, Yin Yang could not imagine what would happen. Yin Yang had already understood the character of this woman who was as unwavering as fire the last time. If something regretful happened because he had told the truth, however, Yin Yang's conscience would be tormented if he kept silent and kept looking at Yun Zuyu like this. If it was not necessary, he really did not want to see Yun Zuyu, this heart-wrenching woman, being so heartbroken. Chapter 66. However, Yun Zuyu was pleasantly surprised that Yun Yang had taken the initiative to visit. She did not dare to contact Yun Yang for fear of leaking the secret, but she was constantly worried about him. Would there be any new news? As long as Yun Yang was still around, she felt that the connection between her and her lover was still there. It's okay if there's no new news. Yun Zuyu chuckled and said, "That's right. What I said was not quite right. Don't take it to heart, brother. Come and visit sister-in-law more often, hee. Sister-in-law's heart will be content." When she spoke to Yun Yang, she was unconsciously trying to please him. She was afraid that if she offended Yun Yang, he would not come. "Sister you don't have to be like this." Yun Yang said uncomfortably, "The more you act like this, the more uncomfortable I feel." Yun Zuyu smiled gently and said, "It's okay. Sister Yu is so happy that you can come." When she heard that Yun Yang had not called her sister-in-law, her gaze dimmed. Then, she followed Yun Yang's form of address and called herself Sister Yu. "But this young brother really doesn't want to come." Yun Yang said, "Because as long as I come, I'll definitely trouble Sister Yu with many things." Yun Zuyu smiled sweetly. "You know, I'm very happy to be troubled by you. The more trouble you bring, the better. That way, I'll feel that I've done something for him. Yun Yang asked cautiously, may I ask about Sister Yu's past with Fifth Sir? Yun Zuiyu smiled sadly and said, the past is actually very simple. Both of us came from the same place. That place was a vicious training camp. Too many orphans were gathered there. When I was caught, I was only 5 years old, and he was 6. In that place, boys were trained to be thieves, pickpockets, killers, or beggars. Those without talent had their limbs broken or were tortured to become deformed and brought out to beg. Girls, those with good looks, were trained to be prostitutes or other things that could please men. They were sold. Those with exceptional talent were trained to be female assassins or the death chamber. Those who were not good-looking or had average talents were sent out to beg. When they grew up, they would be toyed with by men if they were good-looking, but those who were not good-looking were killed right away. Such a vicious place. Yun Yang was filled with righteous indignation. Where is it? Yun Zuiyu smiled miserably. At that time, he was considered the strongest among the children inside. He took care of us little sisters everywhere, and he was also worth training. His aptitude was not bad, and he was listed as a target to be trained as an assassin. When I was 9 years old, I still looked rather handsome. One of the caretakers had evil intentions, and he killed the caretaker and escaped with us 3 little girls. Since then, we've been wandering in the martial world. We don't even know if we're going to live or die. He's also risking his life every day, killing, robbing, or stealing to feed us. Yun Yang sighed softly. Yun Zuiyu did not go into detail about this experience, but Yun Yang could imagine how difficult it must have been for a 10-year-old boy to bring along 3 little girls who were 8 or 9 years old, killing, escaping, and making a living. Fifth brother must have suffered a lot at that time. When I was 11, we met Madame Hong Xiu. Madame Hong Xiu took the 3 of us in, but he rejected Madame Hong Xiu's care and went out on his own. He was only 12 that year. Every year, he would come to see us and bring a lot of things with him. Later on, Madame Hong Xiu passed away from illness. When we were 16, we had no one to rely on again. He came back. Then, 3 years later, when I was 19, we had Cirrus House. It was also that year that he brought a few of his brothers and completely wiped out that evil training base. Everyone there was killed. There were many people in Cirrus House, all of them were brothers and sisters from there. He had always taken care of us. After that, they began to select people. But we didn't know that it was a strange path. We didn't know either, so we followed many people on that path. When we came out, he was taken away. Then, he came back very excited. Yun Zuiyu's gaze was dreary. I knew that he had been selected. After a while, I then knew that it was that place that selected people. Yun Zuiyu said, the person I loved the most had become such a heroic existence. You don't know how excited I was. Yun Yang's heart was filled with sorrow. Excited, perhaps you didn't realize it then. Although fifth brother had become a peerless hero by taking that path, it wasn't a good thing for both of your futures. It was that night. Yun Zuiyu smiled bitterly. I wanted to give all of myself to him. I told him that I wanted to be his woman, I wanted to be his concubine. In the end, he was furious. He said that if he wanted to marry me, he had to marry me openly. But at that time, I knew that even though we were pure and clean ourselves, in the eyes of outsiders, we were still prostitutes in the Cirrus house. I had already lost the right to be his official wife. If he was still a vagabond in the martial arts world, of course, he could, but he wasn't. But he still insisted. We made a scene, and parted on bad terms. Yun Yang closed his eyes. As one of the 9 Supremes, he had to marry a woman openly. How difficult. He recalled how fifth brother had been like when he had just joined the 9 Supremes and became one of the 9 Supremes. At that time, he seemed to be troubled and unhappy every day. Although he did not delay anything, the struggle in his heart was obvious to anyone. It was only when he brought Yunyang or his other brothers to Cirrus house to play that he would appear to be very happy, but when he returned, he would revert to his usual self. This Cirrus house, Yunyang had actually come here many times in disguise, so we started arguing endlessly, but he refused to change his mind. Finally, last year, he told me that he had thought it through. It's impossible for us to be husband and wife on the surface. Yin Zuyu said, when he comes back from his mission this time, we'll hold a simple ceremony and invite his brothers over for a drink. Then we'll consider it as our marriage. That day, we were all very happy, because I was finally going to be his woman. I was finally going to be with the dream that I had since I was young. He was very happy too. He thought that he had thought it through. That day was the 3rd of the 3rd month. Yunyang lowered his head. The 3rd of the 3rd month. Early in the morning of the 4th of the 3rd month, the 9 of them had departed to Horizontal Cloud Fortress with 800 brothers, heading east. On the 9th of the 3rd month, they had arrived at Tianshan Cliff, but his mission this time. Yin Zuyu smiled sadly, looking at Yunyang and said slowly, he hasn't returned until now. Yin Yang's heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. After a long time, he said softly, Sister Yu, if the sisters have any needs in the future, just look for me. Although 5th Sir isn't here, I'm here for everything. Yin Zuyu smiled. Of course. Although she said so, Yunyang could tell that if she really had any difficulties, she would never look for him for help. Just like how she had never looked for 5th brother for help when Cirrus house was always in trouble. She knew that their identities could not be revealed. Yin Zuyu inhaled softly and wiped away the tears that had flowed from her face without a trace. She forced a smile and said, I can't stop talking about these things. I haven't asked, what is it that I need Sister Yu's help with this time? It's like this. Yunyang pondered and said, there is a general in the military who once called himself the General of the North. He's burly. Although he works with a mask, the corner of a curly beard can be seen from under his mask. It's a little gray too. He's well built, about 8 feet tall and should weigh about 200 caddies. His official position should be higher than a deputy general, a level of command or even higher. At the very least, one can see the aura of authority from his words and actions. Yunyang said, however, there are dozens of generals in the military who fit this condition. I want to find this person among these dozens of people. Yunyang said softly, among these people, there are 7 or 8 who come to Cirrus house frequently. So, I need Sister Yu's help. Yin Zuyu listened carefully and said, this person? Yunyang said in a low voice, something has happened to the 9 bosses. This matter was done by both the military and the government, the royalty, the aristocrats, the aristocratic families, and the forces of the martial world. It's almost a third of the world's superpowers. Now, we want to find these people. We don't ask for riches and glory, we don't ask for generations of nobility, we don't ask for our names to be passed down through the ages. But, this justice must be sought. We can let go of the generals from the enemy's battlefield. Since we're enemies, whatever they do is not despicable, it's what they should do. However, these traitors in the country, these accomplices in the martial world, we plan to not let any of them go. Kill one if you find one. Yin Yang's gaze was cold and determined. How do you plan to do it? Yin Zuyu asked. 9 Familial extermination. Yin Yang enunciated each word clearly, all accomplices shall be killed. All personnel shall be exterminated. This time, for justice, for revenge, we are willing to do such a cruel thing. Even if we have to go to hell in the future, we must do this. Very well. Chapter 67. As usual, Cirrus house was filled with songs and dances. The music was melodious, and there was an endless stream of people coming and going. Many of them were told that there were no rooms available. The ladies were all busy and did not leave, sitting in the main hall downstairs. Cirrus house naturally did not neglect these people, and served them tea and pastries. Among the 12 golden flowers of Cirrus' house, the one sitting in the main hall today was Qing Shanxue. She was dressed in white behind the veil, and the melodious sound of the zither could be heard, captivating everyone. Everyone present, regardless of whether they were Jianghu men with rough faces or scholars themselves, all of them, without exception, pretended to be refined, gentle, and courteous. Some of them, even their ferocious faces seemed to have softened. At the side, there were a few people sitting upright. Although they were dressed in casual clothes, they exuded a military aura. At this moment, these few people were also listening to the zither with their eyes closed, appearing to be engrossed in it. However, today seemed to be different from the past. Behind the veil, there was an additional white shadow the size of a fist, jumping and running around. The next moment, the sound of the zither suddenly became chaotic. Ah! A cry of surprise came from behind the veil. Following that, a small white shadow sprinted out from behind the veil. It was a small white cat, only the size of a fist, covered in fur and with azure blue eyes. It was extremely adorable. It squatted on the ground, and then burrowed under a table. Whitey. Qing Shanxue's panicked voice came from behind the veil. My Whitey ran out, so it was Qing Shanxue's pet? Immediately, Qing Shanxue walked out from behind the veil. Her eyes scanned the surroundings anxiously. Her beautiful face was filled with anxiety. Just by standing there, everyone in the main hall had their eyes glued to her. She was pitiful, delicate, and an outstanding beauty. One look at her made people feel a strong desire to protect her. Everyone, can you help me and catch my Whitey back? Don't hurt it. Qing Shanxue's voice was soft, and her eyes shyly looked at the scene, but there was hope in her eyes. Don't worry, miss. I'll help you catch it back. Instantly, there was an uproar. It was just a cat. It wouldn't be easy to catch them. A maidservant walked past the hall and bent down to search for traces of the kitten under the table. She called out, Dabai. Dabai, come out quickly. Suddenly, a white shadow flashed, and a kitten ran out from under a table. Someone at the side reached out to grab it, but the kitten nimbly jumped and dodged. And then, suddenly, swoosh, this little white cat actually scratched the buttocks of the maid who was bent over and hadn't straightened up yet. Instantly, there was a big hole in her clothes, and even her underwear was torn, revealing her pink buttocks. Everyone's eyes widened. Ah! The servant girl's face was bright red as she straightened her back with one hand. Dabai, you're such a jerk. She covered her back with her skirt and ran away with a red face. The hall was filled with laughter. Good job, Dabai. Someone actually cheered, and there were even people who whistled. That kitten nimbly shuttled through the crowd. It was clear that it was not afraid of people. Another maid passed by, and the kitten leaped up and clawed at her. Chee! The skirt on her buttocks was torn again. Instantly, cheers, cheers, and whistles rang out. Even those so-called scholarly gentlemen's eyes lit up, and they said, what a scandal, what a scandal. Her eyes, however, obediently peeked at the exposed parts of her body through the torn hem of her dress. The maid immediately covered her face and ran away. Whistles rang out from behind. A few maids were all trying to catch the kitten, but all the guests were not so enthusiastic. Because everyone could see that this kitten seemed to like to grab women's skirts. It was a typical gangster kitten. But I like it, wahahaha. Wait until it tore a few more, hee hee hee. Everyone had a tacit understanding, and they began to chase the kitten towards the maids. The kitten was abnormally agile. It jumped up and down, and it was extremely slippery. The maids kept calling out, but they had no way of catching it. Suddenly, with a swoosh, a fat man's buttocks were also grabbed, revealing a round buttocks. The men in the hall roared with laughter. Ha ha ha. Officer Lee, you're so fair, ha 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 ha. Officer Lee laughed as well. After all, men were more open-minded than women. He scolded jokingly, this damn little lecher. Lifting his robe to cover his buttocks, he took 2 steps back and sat down. He did not leave. Chee, a few more people's robes were torn by the kitten. Instantly, the hall became even more chaotic. Everyone laughed and screamed, and whistles rang out one after another. How was this still the quiet and elegant Cirrus house of the past? Qing Shanxue stood on top, seemingly stunned. Yun Zuiyu appeared from the second floor, and said angrily, "What's going on? Hurry up and catch this kitten." "Shue, I told you not to bring a kitten with you. Look at what you've done, what a scandal." Qing Shanxue was on the verge of tears. "Sister Yu. I'm sorry, I didn't expect." Following Yun Zuyu's urging, everyone's movements sped up as well. However, the kitten was unbelievably agile. Often, when there was nowhere to go, it would flip and leap and break out of the encirclement in a miraculous manner. A few more men and 2 more maids' buttocks suffered. The laughter and scolding grew louder and louder. However, no one was angry. Obviously, everyone treated this accident as an unusually fun game. The next moment, the few fellows who seemed to be military officers stood up as well. 2 of them had a face full of curly beard and were tall and burly. The kitten ran around like lightning. Suddenly, with 2 swoosh sounds, it tore open the buttocks of 2 of the military officers. Loud laughter and coquettish grumbles rang out incessantly. Swoosh, swoosh. The others were not spared as well. In the hall, only a small part of the buttocks were exposed, running around. Of course, most of them were men. However, they did not care if they were exposed. Even if they were all exposed, they did not care. Swoosh. Just as the last bearded man stood up, the robe behind his buttocks was torn open. F***ck. The fellow cursed subconsciously, causing the crowd's displeasure. What a good kitten this is, what a cat that understands men's hearts. How dare you scold it? You really don't know what's good for you. On the other side, Yun Yang and Yun Zuyu's eyes shone at the same time. There was a scar on the man's buttocks, the shape of a crescent on his left buttocks. Found it. Yun Yang's gaze turned cold. Who is this person? Yun Yang asked softly. Zhao Binglong. Yun Zuyu's voice was even colder than his as she said, "He's been fighting in the West all year round. His highest position was once the assistant marshal of the West Expedition Army. People call him Northwest Zhao. Zhao Binglong, Northwest Zhao." Yun Yang immediately retrieved this person's information in his mind. He smiled faintly and said, "No wonder he looks unfamiliar. He's a general from the Northwest. This person is brave and good at fighting. His cultivation base is also at the 4th level mystical chi. Besides, he's cunning and cunning. In the West, he's considered to have made a name for himself. In addition, he has countless valiant soldiers under his command. He's cautious by nature and has countless men of sacrifice by his side. His bodyguards are known as the 36 Wolf Cavalry of the Northwest. They're famous." Yun Yang recalled the records of this Northwest Zhao written in a military case file. This person's military exploits are impressive and his reputation is known far and wide. However, he's lustful. It's said that he has more than 30 concubines in his home. He's also a womanizer all year round. He's requested many times to redeem Shue, but Shue, didn't agree to it and I didn't agree to it either. Yun Ziyu said softly, "I've always felt that this person is a little sinister. Besides, he likes the new and hates the old. I don't approve of Shue or following him either." Yin Yang nodded. "Sister Yu, I've found him. I've troubled you for the past 3 days. Lustful, curly beard, grayish-white, muscular build, lustful. There's a crescent scar behind his buttocks. It's him." "That's right." All the conditions matched. Yin Ziyu said, "What are you saying? I actually hope that if there's a chance, I can kill a few of these beasts with my own hands." Yin Yang said in a low voice, "Sister Yu, there will be a chance. There will definitely be a chance." At this moment, someone came to report, "Sister Yu, General Zhao would like to meet Sister Yu to discuss some matters." Yun Zuyu's expression turned cold as she said, "Can't you see that I have a guest here?" The maid retreated obediently. After a while, an anxious voice came from outside the door, "General, General, you can't go in." Then, a rough voice laughed. "What kind of distinguished guest does Miss Yu have? You don't even want to see me." The door was abruptly pushed open. A burly man stood at the door, his gaze like lightning as he scanned the room. It was General Zhao, Zhao Binglong, Northwest Zhao. Seeing Yun Zuyu, his eyes flashed with a hint of greed, but when he saw Yun Yang, his eyes narrowed, a cold glint flashing across them. Yun Yang frowned. He had wanted to take care of this General Zhao at night, but he did not expect this fellow to be even more impatient than he was, sending himself to his doorstep now. "Who is this? You don't look familiar." Zhao Binglong spoke eerily and entered the room without being invited. Without waiting for the host to greet him, he sat down on a chair. Yun Zuyu's face was pale with anger. "General Zhao, why are you so rude?" Zhao Binglong laughed heartily and said, "Miss Yu's words are really strange. It's not easy for this Zhao to return, but I've been here for 4 consecutive days. I wanted to discuss some matters with Miss Yu, but I haven't even been able to see Miss Yu's face." He said eerily, "I've been bathing in blood and killing enemies at the border, and the military is filled with uncouth men. I think Miss Yu can forgive me if I'm a little hot-tempered." The threat in his words was clear. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.